Chapter 340. Marty's expression kept changing. He had to admit that Yama's decision was the right one. Without Chi-Yu and his Zodiac army, they would not have been able to obtain the final victory. If they could solve the problem quickly, the West might not have suffered too much by the time they got back. Thinking of this, Marty was tempted. After all, if they were the only ones who stayed, they would not be able to do anything. He sighed and said, "All right, even if I become the greatest sinner in the history of the Vatican, I have no choice but to do this. Miss Yamu, I am willing to lead the Vatican and follow you to the east. But how are we going to go there now?" They did not have the flying ability of the golden-winged eagle or Chi-Yu. The west and the east were separated by oceans. It was not easy to go there. Yamu said, "Let's find the nearest airport first. The Burning Legion has not attacked here yet. We have no choice but to commandeer a plane. I'm only in the west now. It would be best if the crisis in the east is not too difficult to deal with." A faint light surrounded the thick body. The dark red air flow gradually turned green and white. The two lights alternated. At this moment, the Bull Demon King's body looked no different from an ordinary human. If it was not for the large horns on his head, no one would treat him as an alien even if he walked into the human world. At this moment, Old Bull was about 2 meters tall. He was about 2 meters tall, and his originally ferocious face had become much more handsome. There was even a hint of fortitude that could only be seen on soldiers on his face. Every time the greenish-white light flashed, his aura would become a little stronger. At this moment, the energy on his body had become more and more powerful. Even he himself was unable to sense the extent of his own energy. He seemed to have vaguely felt the mysteries of the universe. He could feel the vast and surging energy in the universe. He knew he had surpassed the energy intensity of this world and reached an unprecedented realm. The light slowly faded. Bull Demon King had a strange look in his eyes. "Chi-Yu, oh Chi-Yu, I didn't expect your energy to be so pure. Actually, if you try your best to change a little, perhaps, it will be very difficult for me to destroy you. Now, I've already taken advantage of your energy. What a pity. Your spiritual imprint and soul have already been devoured by me, so you don't need to thank me." Ha ha! A white light rose in front of the Bull Demon King, and the Pangu axe had shrunk to the size of a human axe. Not only did the greenish-white light show its sharpness, but it also showed the special aura of a super offensive divine weapon. No one dared to ignore its powerful energy. Even the Bull Demon King was no exception. The clear sky pagoda floated beside the Pangu axe. The energy radiance on the tower was like a ring, flickering rhythmically. The Bull Demon King laughed. "Why, Axe Soul, Tower Spirit, have you sensed my aura?" He was right. Your feelings are not wrong. How laughable that Chi-Yu actually thought that I couldn't use you guys. But how would they know that you don't reject my aura at all? What a pity, what a pity. If the Xinyuan sword didn't reject my aura and felt my real-life imprint, I would have left Chi-Yu a long time ago. Chi-Yu, how are your preparations going? When I completely refine the Pangu axe and the clear sky pagoda, it will be the moment of our decisive battle. I hope you won't let me down. 2 beams of white light suddenly bloomed at the same time, falling on the left and right hands of the Bull Demon King. The dark red light and the greenish-white light on his body disappeared at the same time, and a layer of gray energy light covered the 2 divine weapons in an instant. The huge energy was constantly fluctuating, and every time it fluctuated, it would produce a special kind of energy aura. In this unknown cave, it constantly expanded and contracted. Even if Chi-Yu was standing here, he could not feel what kind of changes had happened to the energy of the Bull Demon King inside the gray energy cover. 3 days passed by quickly. In these 3 days, Chi-Yu did nothing. He did not cultivate, nor did he think about how to deal with the Bull Demon King. It had been 3 days, and all he did was accompany his parents and sister. He was always with them. After the 9-star alignment appeared, the Golden Valley Group had temporarily suspended operations. The company's employees went home to rest and wait for the notice to go back to work. Golden Valley Group had always been generous to its employees. Although they had suspended operations this time, Because it was an unavoidable factor of nature, Chi Tianlei had specially decided to pay all the employees during their vacation. Just this point alone was enough to show the boldness of a large international company. Since he had reunited with his parents, this was the first time that Chi had completely put down all the burdens in his heart to accompany his parents and sister. Coupled with the company of his 3 confidants, these 3 days, he could be said to have lived like an immortal. Only by putting aside all the worries in his heart could he truly feel the feeling of relaxation. Unfortunately, under the effect of the 9-star alignment, Chi did not feel the warmth of the sun. Otherwise, all of this would have been even more perfect. "Dad, Mom, we have to go." Chi stood in front of his parents and sister, smiling as he bade them farewell. On the surface, Chi Tianlei and his wife did not see anything different about him. Chi Tianlei said, "The situation outside is very chaotic now. I'm really worried. The sun still hasn't appeared. If this continues, I'm afraid Earth will be affected more and more. Besides, I heard that the West is not very peaceful. Fortunately, nothing has happened in Yanhuan. No matter what you do, you must put your own safety first. Don't forget, we only have you as our son. I don't want to see you die before me." Chi smiled and nodded. "Dad, don't worry. I will." Would he really? Only the heavens would know. As a man, many times, there were many things that could not be done with reason alone. There were some things that one knew were impossible. He had to do the same. Ru Yue, Snow Girl, and Shang Bing cooperated very well. They knew that Chi Yu did not want his parents to worry about him. At this moment, Chi Yingying ran to Chi Yu's side and shook his hand, saying, "Big brother, when are you going to teach me the rest of the cultivation methods? I have to do the same thing every day. It's so annoying." Chi Yu smiled and said, "Silly girl, haven't you heard of the saying, more haste, less speed?" If he wanted to achieve something, he had to put in the corresponding effort first. In this world, there were many things that he couldn't do. In this world, there is nothing for nothing. When I feel that you are ready to continue learning other cultivation methods, I will naturally teach you. Remember, when you're cultivating, you can't be too hasty. When brother is not around, you have to listen to Mom and Dad. I know. Why are you even more naggy than Mom? Chi Yingying looked at Chi Yu unhappily. She pouted her little mouth and looked very cute. Chi Yu shook his head helplessly. After saying goodbye to his parents, he left with Ru Yue and the other 2 girls. Ying Xiaodai suddenly threw herself into her husband's arms and burst into tears as she watched Chi Yu leave. Chi Tianlei put his arm around Ying Xiaodai's shoulder and sighed. "He has things to do. Let him go. We may be his parents, but we must not be a burden to him at this time." Chi was acting, but so were Chi Tianlei and his wife. Although they had also been very happy these 3 days, they did not know as little about Chi Yu as Chi Yu thought. The 9-star alignment and the emergence of hell and the underworld were all known to Chi Tianlei and his wife. After all, the Golden Grains Group was a global conglomerate. They naturally had their own intelligence system. Chi Tianlei and his wife knew very well that their son was the strongest person in the world. How could he have the leisure to come back and reunite with them when such a situation suddenly appeared on Earth? However, they did not expose Chi Yu. Although they had endured it very hard, they did not want to bring trouble to their son. Now that Chi Yu had left, Ying Xiaodai could no longer hold back the grief in her heart and burst into tears. "Mom, what's wrong?" Ying looked at her mother in shock. Chi Tianlei sighed. "It's nothing. Your mother just can't bear to leave your brother. She will be fine soon. Let's go back to our room." He put his arm around his wife and walked towards the bedroom. At this moment, their silhouettes looked a bit bleak. Chi Yu's aura was completely different the moment he left the house. Although these 3 days had brought him a sense of relaxation, it had also made him feel more pressure at the same time. If he wanted to continue living this comfortable life, then he had to solve the crisis in front of him. No matter how powerful the Bull Demon King was, he had to solve his problem once and for all. Fighting spirit burned in the depths of Chi Yu's heart again. He already had his own plan. Even if he had to take a risk, he had to try. When they returned to the Dragonfield courtyard, All the members of the Zodiac army had already returned to the courtyard. The Zodiac squad once again set up camp in the garden of the villa. At this time, there were more guests in the Dragon Field courtyard. Before entering the courtyard, Chiyu had already sensed a familiar aura. The expression on his face changed slightly as he coldly snorted and entered the courtyard. The Zodiac warriors had already gathered. The returning Zodiac guardian gods were standing at the entrance of the villa. Opposite them, the experts from Greece and the Vatican stood awkwardly. At this time, they had already been surrounded by the Zodiac army. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Chiyu floated down and landed in front of the villa. Ming took a step forward and whispered in his ear. "They seem to have been here for a day and have been waiting for you. We just came back not long ago. I was just about to call you. Why are they here?" Chiyu did not answer Ming's question. Instead, he turned to Pope Marty and said, "Your Holiness, have the problems of hell and the underworld been solved? Why did you come to the East?" Malty glanced awkwardly at Rain Eyes and said, "Mr. Chi, because you and your Zodiac Legion left, I'm afraid that the Zodiac Legion will not be able to protect us. We were defeated by the combined forces of hell and the underworld. In order to preserve the strength to continue fighting them, we had no choice but to temporarily abandon our defensive line and come here to ask for your help. If I'm not mistaken, the problems on your side should have been solved. Do you think you can return to the West with us? Billions of people in the West are waiting for your rescue." Chiyu's gaze swept across Marty and Yumu's faces. Yumu slightly lowered her head. She did not look at Chiyu and did not speak, as if everything had nothing to do with her. Her aura was very calm. "Your Holiness, who told you that the problems on our side have been solved? Perhaps you can't imagine, but what the East is facing is the world's biggest disaster. I'm sorry. I can't promise you to go to the East now. I still have many things to do. You can leave now." It was an unceremonious order for them to leave. In fact, Chiyu did not want to say this, but for some reason, he felt a chill in his heart the moment he saw Yumu. Wen Ting's figure seemed to flash in front of him, and he subconsciously refused. Marty's expression changed. The four cardinals behind him wanted to flare up, but he stopped them. "Mr. Chi, if it's really as you said, then I don't know if there's anything we can do to help you. How about this? We'll help you solve the problems in the East first. Then we'll trouble you to help us in the West. Is that okay?" This was the countermeasure that he and Yumu had discussed long ago. At least on the surface, Chiyu had no reason to refuse. Frowning slightly, Chiyu looked at Marty and said, "But, Your Holiness, even I don't know when the guy who threatens the survival of the East will come. I can only wait for him here. Could it be that the West can still wait? I think it's better for you to go back quickly. Maybe you can even slow down Satan's advance. If I'm done here, I'll naturally go and help you, even if it's just for the sake of the Western people." Before Marty could speak, Cardinal Ginobili, who was behind him, could not hold it in anymore. "Mr. Chi, don't go too far. There's nothing wrong with your East Ming. Why did you lie to us? Even if we did something wrong to you and killed Klinsman, you don't have to do this to us. But you don't have to do this to us. How about this? If you can solve the crisis in the West, I'm willing to offer my life to pay for Klinsman. You alone won't be enough." An ice-cold voice sounded. Christie had also returned from home. She had seen the people from the Vatican long ago. If it weren't for Chiyu, she would have exploded. Now that she heard Ginobili actually dared to challenge Chiyu, she was instantly infuriated and walked out. The ice-cold aura and surging dark energy made even Yumu lift her head subconsciously. Christie's strength had far surpassed Klinsman's. The first empress in the history of the Blood Clan was no joke. Ginobili's pupils contracted for a moment. "Why you are," Christie said coldly. "That's right, I'm that Blood Clan woman. My brother died under your holy light in order to save me. I will make you pay for this sooner or later. But now is not the time. I can delay my revenge, but I won't allow you to doubt Chi Yu's words. Do you think that we Easterners are as despicable as you? Do you only know how to lie to deceive others? Absolutely not." This time, it was everyone in the Zodiac army who shouted in unison. The sound waves were accompanied by surging energy ripples, instantly suppressing the Vatican and the Greek guardians. Marty quickly tried to smooth things over. No, It's not that we don't believe, Mr. Chi. Please don't misunderstand. Mr. Chi, since you have said so, then there's nothing we can do. However, I'm afraid it's useless for us to return to the west now, since the east, where you are, is about to face a disaster. We are willing to stay and help you destroy them. We will wait here with you. After leaving the west, Marty's thoughts became clearer. He realized that Yama's suggestion was correct. As the Pope, although he was not a person who was afraid of death, staying in the west would only be a meaningless sacrifice. With his group of people, could they really stop the Burning Legion? Even when the Sacred Legion was at its peak, they could not do it, let alone now. It was better to stay in the east first. When things were settled here, they would bring Chiyu back with them. Only then would they have a chance of winning. As for the current situation in the west, they couldn't care less. Chiyu frowned and said, "Is this what His Highness the Pope and Miss Yama want? If you want to stay, I won't stop you. You can stay over there." As he spoke, Chiyu pointed to a corner of the courtyard. It was empty. There was nothing there. This time, even Marty could not stand it anymore. "Mr. Chi, please don't go too far. You are tarnishing the dignity of God." Chiyu snorted coldly and said, "Even if God was standing here, He would not speak to me like this. If you don't want to stay, you can leave. Otherwise, I can only entertain you there. As you can see, it is very crowded here." "All right, we will stay there." Yamu, who had been silent all this while, finally spoke. Marty looked at Yamu in confusion. Yama nodded at him and led her Zodiac Guardians to the corner of the courtyard. The Zodiac Guardians made way for them. Left with no other choice, Marty could only let out a sigh and lead the people from the church. He had never suffered such humiliation in his life. As the Pope, he had always lived a luxurious life, but now he had to stay in someone else's courtyard. This was the first time he experienced such a feeling. Marty could not help but feel a little sad, but there was nothing he could do. Chiyu could not even be bothered to look at them as he returned to the villa with the Zodiac Guardian God warriors. "All the teams are back, right? Did anyone fall behind?" Chiyu asked. Sudong said, "No, not a single one is missing. They're all back. Also, the 4 families asked us to bring news. If we need help, we could deploy their forces at any time." "Oh, right. Only the plant soul is not back. I heard from the Shun family that after the plant soul's mother recognized her, she was reluctant to let her come back to join our mission." Chiyu nodded and said, "This is nothing. It is a good thing. The plant soul is very pitiful. She has been an orphan since young and has lost the ability to speak. It is time for her to enjoy the warmth of a family. I will only be happy for her." Guan Ping said, "Chiyu, don't you think it is a little too much for you to treat the Vatican and the Greek people like that just now? No matter what, they are here to help. Although they have their own goals, they're still the strong people of the West." Chiyu waved his hand to stop Guan Ping from continuing. "They deserve this treatment. I have never seen them as equal partners. That's right, they are bastards. It is good enough that we did not kill them. Do you want us to entertain them?" Christie said coldly. Although she could bear to not take revenge for the sake of the big picture, her enemy was there. However, her enemy was right there, and she could no longer suppress the hatred in her heart. Chiyu said, "I have thought about it. Everyone continue to cultivate in my Kong Tong seal. I do not know how long it will be before the Bull Demon King appears. But before he appears, you must try your best to increase your overall strength to the 9 cloud level. That way, our chances of winning will increase a little." Ryue said, "Chiyu, what about the 12 Zodiac teams?" Chiyu pondered for a moment before replying, "Forget about them. Their potential cannot compare to yours. Even if they continue to cultivate, they will not have much of a breakthrough. Let them stay outside and supervise the Vatican and the Greek people. After you enter, I will think of a way to cultivate." The 5-colored light of the Kong Tong seal appeared again. The 5-colored radiance of the Kong Tong seal appeared once more. Amidst the radiance, the Zodiac Guardian God battled, but this time, Chiyu entered with them. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth. The 5 elements and 5 mountains were as majestic as ever. Perhaps it was because of a nourishment from Chiyu's natural source of energy. The 5 elements looked more abundant than before. The 12 Zodiac Guardian God warriors walked towards one of the mountains. Their cultivation method was simple. It was to gather everyone's strength, help someone increase their strength to the 9 cloud level, then change to another. As for the attribute of the person who was being raised, he would go to that mountain when he was cultivating. Senior Yinling Qi Yu requests an audience. Psychic power rippled, transmitting Qi Yu's voice far away. With a flash of white light, Yinling appeared in front of Qi Yu. With a warm smile on his face, he pretended to blame. Qi Yu, you forgot what to call me again. How should I punish you if you call me the wrong one again? Qi Yu hurriedly smiled and said, Big brother Yinling, are you willing to punish me? Yinling said, You're smart. Why are you here? Your strength has reached a bottleneck. Even if you cultivate in the water and fire mountains, you will not improve. After all, divine artifacts like us have to follow the laws of this world. Qi Yu said seriously, Big brother Yinling, I came here this time. I just want to discuss cultivation matters with you. Perhaps you already know what happened between me and Demon Bull. Do you know how this guy came to be? According to the laws of our world, there shouldn't be such a powerful existence. Moreover, he doesn't seem to have gone to other planes to cultivate. What's going on? Yinling said, He has always been in your body, but he has never entered my domain. I've been paying attention to him. I've also analyzed his energy composition. However, this guy is hard to deal with. He hides his aura very well. Furthermore, his energy was already beyond what I could detect. So, I can only sense his strength, but I can't find out how he cultivated his energy. You're right. He has broken through the restraints of this world's laws. He's so powerful that you can't deal with him, especially now that he has obtained Panga's axe and Clear Sky Pagoda. This makes him even more difficult to deal with. If you see him again, you'd better stay away for the time being. Although Yinling's words were rather indirect, Qi Yu still understood what he meant. Yinling was telling him to run the next time he saw the Bull Demon King and not think of any other methods. After all, he couldn't defeat Demon Bull. Before Qi Yu could speak, Yinling continued, The 2 divine weapons that the Bull Demon King obtained were used by the great god Pangu. They are extremely powerful. Frankly speaking, the Clear Sky Pagoda is a bit more powerful than me, while Panga's axe is slightly inferior to Xianyuan's sword. If we were to judge from the perspective of artifacts, Xianyuan's sword would still be around, and you would be on par with him. But if I'm the only one here, you won't stand a chance. The only thing that my undying domain is afraid of are the super sharp artifacts like Xianyuan's sword and Panga's axe. That's why I said that you won't stand a chance. Qi Yu's eyes flickered, and he said, What if I can recast Xianyuan's sword and awaken Big Brother Xianyuan? Do I stand a chance? Yinling pondered for a while, and then said implicitly, Under the situation where the artifacts are equally powerful, the outcome of the battle will depend on the strength of both sides. The same artifact, depending on the strength of its owner, will display entirely different powers. Qi Yu frowned and said, So according to what you said, I won't stand a chance? What if I have the help of the Zodiac Guardian? Yinling sighed and said, Qi Yu, do you think there's anyone in this world who can participate in the battle between you and Demon Bull? You can only rely on your own strength to fight. No external force can affect the outcome of the battle, unless he's a super expert with the same strength as you. Qi nodded and said, I see. What you said is almost the same as what I've judged, but I won't run away. The next time I see Demon Bull will be the time when I fight him to the death. If I flinch, how can I deserve the help of you and Big Brother Xianyuan Han? Yinling's eyes gleamed with a hint of praise. But sometimes a strategic retreat doesn't mean that you don't have courage. When you're weaker than your opponent, you need to make use of your wisdom. Qi Yu lowered his head and thought for a while. Big Brother Yinling, can you tell me if the plane connected to the east still exists after the ancient gods were sealed by the gods of water and fire? Yinling's eyes gleamed with fear. There's something you must understand. The ancient gods weren't sealed, but completely destroyed, because they've already shaken the foundation of this world. If they were still there, I'm afraid Earth would have been destroyed long ago. But in order to protect the East, we left the 10 great artifacts in the East. We're the gods who protect the East. Qi Yu continued to ask, Then does our Eastern god realm still exist? Yinling pondered for a while and said, "It should exist. Why do you ask? Even if it still exists, it must be an empty world. What's the point of a divine realm without gods? Moreover, our Eastern divine realm was so powerful. Although the seal in our Eastern divine realm won't be affected by the 9-star alignment, it's much more powerful than those in the Western plane. You won't have the chance to break through. Don't do these meaningless things." Chiyu shook his head and said resolutely, "How do you know it's meaningless if you haven't tried it? Now, if I want to improve my strength again, I have to go to other planes. I've been to the Western plane, but because of the 9-star alignment, I can't find another suitable plane. Right now, we can only rely on our Eastern plane. I've thought about it carefully these few days. There are only 2 ways to defeat the Bull Demon King. First, I have more than double his number of artifacts, so I still have a chance. Second, I can improve my strength to the real 9-cloud level and use the heavenly fire to recast the Xianyuan sword. With the Xianyuan sword and the Kong seal, I can contend with the Pango axe and the Clear Sky Pagoda. Big Brother Yinling, which of these 2 scenarios is easier to achieve?" Chapter 341. Chiyu said, "Big Brother Yinling, I've made up my mind. I'll choose the second option. I don't have the time to turn back now. Since I've made up my mind, I must try no matter how dangerous it is. I think you must know how to get to the Eastern Divine Realm. Please send me there. I must try. Otherwise, I won't give up." Looking at Chi Yu's resolute gaze, Yinling's hesitation gradually froze. He said in a low voice, "Chi Yu, it's not that easy to get to the Eastern Divine Realm. Its seal is 10 times stronger than those in the Western plane. Not to mention your current strength. Even the Bull Demon King, who has 2 divine weapons, can't do it. Besides, I don't have the energy to send you there." After listening to his words, Chi Yu was stunned. He asked eagerly, "Is there no chance at all?" Yinling shook his head helplessly. You're always so persistent when you want to do something. All right, I'll try my best to help you. But you must promise me that you won't force yourself if you can't do it. At least, I think it shouldn't be a problem for me to protect you." Chi Yu was overjoyed. "Big Brother Yinling, I know you're the best. Then tell me quickly, how can I get to the Eastern Divine Realm?" Yinling said in a low voice, "To put it simply, you must find 2 things, or 2 divine weapons, to get to the Eastern Divine Realm. It's absolutely impossible to break the seal directly. That's suicide. You must have the key to open the gate to the Divine Realm. Only then can you enter the Eastern Divine Realm. Do you understand?" Chi Yu asked doubtfully, "The key to the Divine Realm? What's that?" Yinling said, "You already have the first of the 2 divine weapons. It's the Kunlun mirrors. Because only the Kunlun mirrors can accurately know the location of the other divine weapons. This is also one of its characteristics. In a situation where it didn't have the slightest attack power and could only create some illusions, how could it enter the range of the 10 great god artifacts? As for the other artifact, you will need to rely on the Kunlun mirrors to find it. It is one of the 10 great artifacts. The number 1, Eastern Emperor Bell." When Chi Yu heard the 3 words Eastern Emperor Bell, his body involuntarily trembled. He said in a deep voice, "Eastern Emperor Bell? Was it the super artifact that was superior to the Xianyuan sword and Pango axe? It's ranked first among the 10 great divine weapons and also the most mysterious one. What should I do?" Yinling said, "Exactly, it's the Eastern Emperor Bell. You have to find it if you want to reach the divine world in the East. Because only through the Eastern Emperor Bell will you be able to find the passageway to the divine world." The alignment of the 9 stars was indeed a strong resistance, making all the passages leading to the plane of justice more secure. However, this wasn't absolute. At the very least, the 9-star alignment will have a much smaller impact on our Eastern God realm. Chi Yu asked curiously, "Why? Is there a difference between our Eastern God realm and the Western God realm?" Yinling snorted disdainfully and said, "The Western God realm is nothing. When the divine world first appeared, there was no concept of the West at all. The Eastern God realm is the real divine world. You've seen it. Satan, Hades, and the godly puppet of Athena that Yamu inherited can all be called gods in the West. However, if they were in the East, I'm afraid they wouldn't even be considered as the lowest level of God. Although the passageway between the Eastern God realm and Earth is the most secure, the seal is also the strongest. However, the connection between the Eastern God realm and Earth is also the closest. After all, when the living beings on Earth were created, the Eastern God realm bestowed many things to Earth. If it wasn't for a huge problem that forced the gods of water and fire to kill them, to prevent the world from being completely destroyed, the Eastern God realm would still be a powerful existence that rules this world. That is the most powerful existence in our world. Chi nodded and said, I see. According to what you said, it seems like the Eastern Emperor Bell is the key to opening the Eastern Divine Realm. Yinling nodded approvingly and said, That's right, the Eastern Emperor Bell is the most powerful artifact, but it's not only because of its offensive and defensive capabilities. More importantly, the Eastern Emperor Bell could open the door to the realm of the gods and connect the passage between Earth and the realm of the gods. Therefore, it was the most powerful divine artifact and had always been ranked first. However, after the Eastern gods were killed, the realm of the gods was sealed. As the top of the 10 great divine weapons, the Eastern Emperor Bell was also the one that was sealed the most thoroughly. I only know that it can open the gate of the divine realm, but I can't say for sure whether it can be opened or not. Chiyu frowned and said, Is there any other way? Must it be the Eastern Emperor Bell? With my current strength, with your help, we will be able to pass through the passageway to the God realm. Yinling sighed and said, That's impossible. First of all, we don't know where the passageway to the God realm is. Secondly, even if we know where it is, with your current strength, it's impossible. Also, with your current strength, it's impossible. I'm afraid there's only one guy on Earth who has the power to pass through the strongest seal. Chiyu was secretly shocked and said, You mean the Bull Demon King? Yinling nodded and said, Yes, that's him. With his strength and the powerful energy of the Pangu axe, if he can find the passageway to the God realm, there's at least a 50% chance of breaking through the seal and entering the God realm. Chiyu sighed inwardly. He didn't expect Yinling to have such a high evaluation of the Bull Demon King. This indirectly reflected the huge gap between him and the Bull Demon King. After pondering for a moment, he said, Brother Yinling, tell me the truth. If the current Bull Demon King is compared to the Eastern gods of the past, what position can he reach? Yinling said, I can't calculate the specifics, but at least I'm sure that he can become an upper-middle level Eastern gods. That's the so-called great gods. If his current strength is improved, he can have the ability to break through the void and travel freely in the universe. As far as I know, this ability, among the ancient gods, only 4 people can reach this level. In other words, the Bull Demon King's strength is second only to the 4 great gods. They're the fire god Zhurong and the water god Gonggong, and Enviwa and Pangu they created. Chiyu involuntarily sucked in a breath of cold air after hearing Yinling's words. He knew that Old Ox was so powerful that it would be difficult for him to go against him, but he never imagined that the Demon Bull King would be this powerful. According to Yinling, unless he could reach that level, how could he fight against the old bull? At the thought of this, Chiyu was even more determined to go to the divine realm. He faintly felt that if he wanted to improve his strength to the 9-cloud level, the Eastern Divine Realm was his only chance. Yinling said that the 9-star alignment had a much smaller impact on the Eastern Divine Realm. As long as he could find a way to improve the water and fire thundercloud force, in addition to the wind and thunder thundercloud force, he would be able to break through the final bottleneck. At that time, he could use the heavenly fire to reforge the Xianyuan sword. With the help of the 2 divine weapons, he might have a chance. Seeing that Chiyu was silent, Yinling continued. Chiyu, I understand how you're feeling now, but you have to think it through. Looking for the Eastern Emperor Bell is an extremely dangerous thing. When the gods of water and fire sealed the Eastern Divine Realm, they obviously didn't want such a powerful god to appear in the East. Therefore, the power of the seal on the Eastern Emperor Bell must be extremely terrifying. If you go looking for it rashly, even if you can find it, the seal on the Eastern Emperor Bell will definitely bring you great trouble. Although you're already very powerful, you can't compare to the Eastern Emperor Bell that can tear open the Eastern Divine Realm. As for the seals that seal the God realm, they're all based on the divine artifacts themselves. It's very likely that you'll be destroyed in the seal on the Eastern Emperor Bell. I know that you're very worried about the current situation on Earth, but if you're thinking about it selfishly, even though the Bull Demon King is powerful with your current strength and the power of the Kunlun mirrors, he won't be able to do anything to you if you deliberately want to escape. A cold light flashed in Chi Yu's eyes, and he said angrily, "Brother Yinling, are you asking me to live without purpose? So what if I can survive? I've already lost my home. What's the point of living alone?" Yinling said, "With me around, at least your family and friends can leave with you. Chi Yu, although I admire your courage, I don't want you to take risks. It wasn't easy for me to break free from the seal, and I really don't want to go back." Chi Yu took a deep look at Yinling. He knew that Yinling didn't think that he could obtain the Eastern Emperor Bell at all. However, the more he thought so, the stronger the invisible arrogance in Chi Yu's heart became. How many people did he have, including his family and friends? Compared to the total number of people on Earth, it was just a drop in the ocean. If he could live without purpose, what about Earth? Would it really be destroyed by the Bull Demon King? "Brother Yinling, you don't have to say any more. I've already made up my mind." Chi Yu's expression suddenly became very calm, and a strange smile appeared on his face. Yinling looked at Chi Yu and asked, "Have you really made up your mind?" Chi Yu nodded and said, "Brother Yinling, for the sake of our friendship, please try your best to protect my family and friends if I die at the hands of the Bull Demon King. If I give it my all, at least I'll still have a chance. If I give up this last chance, I'm afraid I won't have the courage to challenge the Bull Demon King ever again. I won't do that. I'm not doing it for anyone else, but for myself. I must challenge the Bull Demon and have a fair duel with him." Yinling fell silent. He hadn't expected Chi Yu to be so determined. However, he also knew that if Chi Yu chose to live without purpose, he would never be able to improve his strength in this lifetime. It wasn't a matter of energy, but a matter of mentality. If he wanted to advance to a higher level, he had to have a heart that would never admit defeat. Yinling looked at Chi Yu's determined face and said, "All right, I'll play with you this time. I've lived peacefully for so many years, and it seems like I should look for some excitement. So what if it's the Eastern Emperor Bell? Even if it's ranked first among the 10 great artifacts, I still have a chance with the Kunlun mirrors." Chi Yu nodded and said, "I'll leave it to you, Brother Yinling. I'll look for snow first." Chi Yu released his mental strength and quickly found the Snow Girl, who was cultivating through the guidance of his soul. Snow Girl, Shang Bing, the plant soul, and Christy couldn't participate in the Zodiac Guardian Warriors cultivation, so they gathered together and cultivated their own energy. Although they didn't have as much potential as the Zodiac Guardian Warriors, their strength was greatly improved during the cultivation process through the energy of the origin of nature and the aura of the 5 elements in the 5 elements territory. "Snow," Chi Yu called through his soul and woke the Snow Girl up from her cultivation state. The Snow Girl was wearing a snow-white dress. As she was in a cultivation state, her entire body was emitting a layer of misty blue radiance, which made her look like a fairy. Perhaps it was because she was nourished by Chi Yu, but she seemed to be more beautiful than before. "Chi Yu, why are you here?" Snow Girl asked softly. Chi Yu gestured for her to keep quiet. A green light flashed and enveloped her delicate body. In the blink of an eye, they had arrived at another 5 elements mountain where no one was cultivating. The Snow Girl's little hands were very cold, but it wasn't pure coldness. Instead, it was a refreshing feeling. Chi Yu couldn't help but feel refreshed as he felt the energy release from her body. "Snow, I'm afraid we're going to have to go on an adventure. Are you willing to go with me?" Chi Yu asked. The Snow Girl giggled and said, "What's wrong with you? You always say such silly things. Ever since I've known you, when have you not gone on an adventure?" Chi Yu shook his head and said, "No, it's different this time. We might lose our lives this time. Are you afraid?" The Snow Girl said, "Tell me, where do you want to go? As long as I'm by your side, I have nothing to fear. At most, we'll be a pair of lovebirds. Shall we all go together this time?" Chi Yu said, "No, only the 2 of us will go. The others will stay in the Kongtong seal and continue to cultivate." Then he briefly recounted his conversation with the seal spirit. Listening to Chi Yu's narration, the snow girl's eyes constantly flickered with a strange light, especially when she heard Chi Yu say that they were going to find the Eastern Emperor Bell. The strange light in her eyes became even more intense. Of course we're going. It's such a fun thing. Why wouldn't we go? The snow girl said with an excited smile. Chi Yu was stunned. He frowned and said, "This isn't fun." The snow girl said, "So many storms and waves have passed. Isn't it just to find the divine tool? Don't worry about me. I'll naturally go with you. When do we leave?" Chi Yu said sternly, "Time is tight. We'll go now." He didn't promise anything to the snow girl. The snow girl didn't ask anything else. She knew that as long as Chi Yu was there, he wouldn't let her come to any harm. Unless, you want to find the Eastern Emperor Bell? A voice that was even colder than the snow girl's coldest voice suddenly sounded. A dark green light gushed out from the snow girl's chest. In the blink of an eye, she appeared in front of Chi Yu. The beautiful face and the illusory light represented her identity. It was the immortal of the Kunlun mirrors. When Chi Yu saw her, he hurriedly said, "Senior, I still need your help this time." Senior Ling said that only you know the whereabouts of the Eastern Emperor Bell. I'll have to trouble you this time. The immortal of the mirror looked at Chi Yu coldly. She didn't have a good impression of Chi Yu. Chi Yu and the snow girl had been intimate more than once. As the snow girl was willing, the immortal of the mirror couldn't do anything about it. However, the immortal of the mirror possessed the snow girl's body. Moreover, the Kunlun mirrors possessed the same aura and senses as the other divine tools. It was completely connected to the host. Every time Chi Yu and the snow girl were intimate, the immortal of the mirror would feel inexplicably ashamed. Therefore, she hadn't come out for a long time. She only occasionally communicated with the snow girl. "Why should I help you? Who do you think you are? You still want to find the Eastern Emperor Bell? I think you should just give up." Chi Yu's heart sank. He thought to himself, "How could I forget about this?" The immortal of the mirror was different from Ling and Xin Yuan Han. She didn't have a good relationship with me. It seems that if I want to go to the realm of gods, I must first get through her. Senior, can't you help me with this? As long as you're willing to help me find the Eastern Emperor Bell, I'll agree to any conditions. Since he was asking for help, Chi Yu had no choice but to lower his status and beg. The immortal of the mirror snorted disdainfully. She scanned Chi Yu from head to toe. "You just gained some strength, and you can't hold back anymore. Do you think that with your current strength, you can obtain the Eastern Emperor Bell? That's impossible. The Eastern Emperor Bell has never had a master. Even when the gods of earth, water, and fire created it, they only left it on earth to guard the East. If you want to obtain the Eastern Emperor Bell, you must break through its seal. Is that something you can do?" Chi Yu was speechless. This immortal of the mirror obviously didn't want to cooperate with him. Hearing her say this, Chi Yu couldn't help but look at Snow Girl, who was beside him, for help. The two of them were already very close. Snow Girl naturally understood what he meant. She hurriedly went forward and held the immortal of the mirror's hand. She begged, "Sister, please help us. If we can't find the Eastern Emperor Bell, we won't be able to go to the realm of gods to find a way to deal with the Bull Demon King. You don't want to see the earth being ruled by the Bull Demon King, right? Aren't the 10 great artifacts used to guard the East? But the 10 great artifacts also need people to use them. Big sister, please help us, I beg you." Hearing Snow Girl's words, the immortal of the mirror's cold expression softened. She frowned and said, "Snow, it's not that I don't want to help you. Do you know how strong the seal on the Eastern Emperor Bell is? Even though we are both divine artifacts, we can still be destroyed by its seal. Moreover, among the 10 great artifacts, I hate it the most. I won't go and find it." As she said this, her eyes shone with anger. It was as if she had thought of something in the past. Chi Yu saw that the immortal of the mirror's tone had softened. He hurriedly said, "Senior, we don't want the Eastern Emperor Bell. We only hope that we can get its help to open the door of the realm of gods and go to the realm of gods. Don't tell me that with your and Senior Ling's help, we still can't enter the Eastern Emperor Bell seal. After all, both of you are divine artifacts like it." The immortal of the mirror said calmly, "Entering the seal is easy. However, if you want to walk out of the seal alive or find the real location of the Eastern Emperor Bell, It will be difficult. If you think it through, it's not like I can't take you there. However, there is something I need to tell you first. Once the danger reaches a certain level, I will immediately bring snow and force my way through. When that time comes, I won't be able to take care of you. Don't blame me for letting you die there." Hearing this, Chiyu wasn't shocked. Instead, he was happy. He smiled and said, "No problem. If I die there, I can only blame myself for not being skilled enough. As long as you can protect Snow, it will be the best help for me." Without the worry of protecting Snow Girl, and with the protection of the Kunlun mirrors, Snow Girl wouldn't be harmed. This was what Chiyu hoped for the most. However, he felt a little strange. Among the 10 great divine artifacts, the Kunlun mirrors was ranked second from the bottom. The Kanton seal's ranking was much higher than it. Just now, Yinling didn't seem to have the confidence to protect him. So why did the immortal of the mirror seem to have the confidence to protect Snow? What about the female? Could it be because she could open a space and bring Snow Girl with her at any time? Although this was what he thought. However, Chiyu didn't ask any questions. Snow Girl looked at Chiyu and pouted. "No, since we're going together, we must leave together." Chiyu gave Snow Girl a look, indicating for her to stop talking. He turned to the immortal of the mirror and said, "Senior, let's go now. No matter what happens this time, even if I can't come back, I sincerely thank you for your help." Seeing Chiyu being so courteous, the immortal in the mirror was no longer as cold as before. Her misty eyes revealed a trace of complicated light, as if there was anticipation, longing, anger, and resentment within. "Fine, then I'll bring you to him. Chiyu, listen carefully. When we reach the seal of the Eastern Emperor Bell, you must be with Snow Girl at all times. I will do my best to protect you. However, I only have the confidence to bring one person out of the seal of the Eastern Emperor Bell. I'll tell you all of this in advance so that you won't say that I'm heartless." Chiyu nodded and said, "All right, let's go now." The immortal of the mirror said, "Let's get out of here first. I can't use my divine power in the 5 elements domain." The soldiers of the Zodiac army were still working hard to cultivate. They also knew that in the near future, they would face an incomparably powerful enemy. However, they were not afraid at all. In fact, they were even more excited. However, they were also at a loss. As their king, he had already embarked on the most dangerous journey of his life. With a flash of light, Chiyu floated out of the domain of the Kongtong seal with Snow Girl. The 5-colored light automatically converged in front of Chiyu's chest. Every time he came out after cultivating in the 5 elements domain, Chiyu would feel refreshed. At this time, his energy had completely reached its peak state. As soon as the 2 of them came out, the dark green light once again shone from Snow Girl's chest. Looking at her full breasts, Chiyu couldn't help but think of the one and only bra that the Kunlun mirrors had transformed. He couldn't help but have a strange feeling in his heart. The immortal of the mirror, who was wearing a long emerald dress, appeared next to Snow Girl along with the dark green light. On the surface, they seemed to be about the same age and both had an icy temperament. However, because of Chiyu, the coldness on Snow Girl's body had already softened a lot. Her gentle gaze was always on her lover. The room in the Dragonfield courtyard was very quiet. The darkness outside seemed to have infected the inside of the villa. There was a cold and gloomy atmosphere everywhere. The immortal of the mirror said, "Get ready, I'm going to start. Chiyu, I need your energy to assist Snow Girl." Chiyu nodded. His figure flashed, and he had already walked behind Snow Girl. From behind, he wrapped his arms around her slender waist, pulled her into his arms, and tightly stuck to the back of Snow Girl's buttocks. The immortal of the mirror looked at them and couldn't help but frown, but she didn't say anything. She also knew that Chiyu's way of transferring energy could minimize the loss of energy during the transfer process, and the effect was also the best. Hugging Snow Girl's slender waist and tightly sticking to her soft and elastic body, Chiyu couldn't help but feel his heart sway. That kind of comfortable feeling made his body slightly hot. Snow Girl's feeling was even deeper than Chiyu's. Chiyu's body was hot, and she only felt that her whole body was stuck to a stove. That strong temperature seemed to completely melt her body. The incomparably comfortable feeling made her whole body tremble. In Chiyu's arms, she always felt so safe, as if there was no power that could hurt her. A dark green light condensed in front of them, and in the blink of an eye, it had already condensed into an energy form of Kunlun mirrors. The immortal of the mirrors' face was very dignified. Her hands turned over in front of her chest, and the back of the Kunlun mirrors was facing outwards. Chiyu hugged Snow Girl, and he saw that on the back of the Kunlun mirrors, there were many complex engravings. It seemed to be a special type of text, and it was a text that he had never seen before. A low and lengthy chant came from the mouth of the immortal of the mirror. The strange tone and language was something that Chiyu and Snow Girl couldn't understand. As she chanted, the dark green light began to become more and more intense. The tyrannical energy fluctuations constantly revolved around the Kunlun mirrors. The complex characters seemed to come to life, and they began to move slowly. In just a moment, the dark green light had completely wrapped the body of the immortal of the mirror. The huge energy fluctuations continued to fill the air, and layers of dense characters appeared in front of her, floating in the air in the form of energy. Some of the characters began to flow into the body of the immortal of the mirror. The immortal of the mirror seemed to feel some pain, and her hands were crossed in front of her chest, constantly changing various gestures. Her delicate body turned, and she was already in front of Snow Girl. Her body leaned back, and she stuck close to Snow Girl's body. The illusory energy body merged into Snow Girl's body, and the dark green light in front of Snow Girl's chest suddenly became stronger. Chiyu's hands were around Snow Girl's waist, and at this time, half of the immortal of the mirror's body had merged into Snow Girl's body. What made Chiyu feel strange was that the back of his hands felt like real skin, and not the energy of the immortal of the mirror. He couldn't help but secretly admire these artifacts. They really had their own unique characteristics. The green light became more and more intense. Snow Girl's body tensed up, and the energy in her body began to quickly transfer to her chest. The cold air was the unique energy aura of Snow Girl, and with the support of her energy, the dark green light in front of the immortal of the mirror became more and more intense. At the same time, the dark green characters that were released from her body expanded outwards and completely enveloped the three of them. This time, it was different from previous transmigrations. At least, that was what Chiyu felt. Snow Girl's energy seemed to be swallowed up, and it was flowing away at a crazy rate. Soon, Chiyu felt that more than half of the energy in her body had been lost. He knew that it was time for him to take action. At this time, the immortal of the mirror suddenly retracted her hands and grabbed Chiyu's hands. While Chiyu was stunned, she had already pulled his hands up and covered them in front of Snow Girl's full chest. Originally, Chiyu thought that the immortal of the mirror's bra would be as hard as armor, but who knew that when he really touched it, it was as soft as cotton, and the elasticity seemed to be a bit stronger than Snow Girl's, and it didn't feel like metal at all. Chapter 342. Chiyu didn't have much time to think. The energy in his body gushed out. In order to make it easier for the fairy in the mirror to absorb it, he directly opened his source of nature during the process of releasing the energy. All the energy in his body began to transform crazily under the effect of the huge source of nature. The four types of thundercloud force were completely transformed into a single aura of the source of nature, and then injected into the Kunlun mirror's transformed bra through his hands. In order to prevent the Snow Girl from collapsing due to the excessive absorption of energy by the Kunlun mirrors, he also slowly transferred the source of nature's energy into the Snow Girl's body through his chest and abdomen, which was in contact with the Snow Girl's back and buttocks, to help her maintain her current situation. Only an expert like Chiyu would be able to multitask an enormous amount of energy at the same time. At this time, the fairy in the mirror was in front of them. Chiyu and Snow Girl couldn't see it. At this time, although the fairy in the mirror was an energy body, her delicate face had already turned red. Chiyu's hands on the Snow Girl's chest had completely covered the transformed bra of the Kunlun mirrors. In fact, it was like he was caressing the body of the fairy in the mirror. That strange feeling was so real. In the past, when Chiyu and the Snow Girl were intimate, it was only intimate. The fairy in the mirror could strongly feel the change in the spiritual aura of the snow girl and the impact on her. But now it was different. She used big hands that were full of energy and heat directly touched her body. That strong feeling of strangeness. She didn't know how many tens of thousands of years she had not experienced it. On the other hand, Snow Girl was having a different kind of feeling at this time. Chiyu's body was tightly pressed against hers, giving her a sense of security. The big hand that was caressing her chest was constantly releasing heat, causing her whole body to become limp and numb. The energy could be absorbed by the Kunlun mirrors, but the surging heat remained on her body. Her pretty face had already turned red, her breath was like orchids, and her eyes were like silk. She had already begun to feel aroused. At this moment, Chiyu was probably the only one who did not feel anything special. Although he was very attracted to the Snow Girl, this matter was related to whether or not he could chase the evil dimension away from Earth. In the process of assisting the Kunlun mirrors, he naturally became extremely cautious and focused all his attention on the process of transferring energy, as well as the absorption of energy from the outside world. He didn't pay much attention to the changes in Snow Girl. Chiyu's strength was indeed strong. The huge 4 types of thundercloud force were transformed by the origin of nature into pure neutral energy. The gentle energy of the origin of nature was like an endless river flowing into the Kunlun mirrors. For a moment, the aquamarine light released by the Kunlun mirrors suddenly blazed, and the huge energy wave made the words clearly visible. In just a few breaths' time, the 3 of them were completely shrouded in it, and it was no longer possible to see their figures from the outside. More words gushed into the body of the fairy in the mirror, and the huge energy wave began to form a vortex. The aquamarine vortex appeared above the heads of the 3 of them. As it rotated faster and faster, the whole room was reflected in aquamarine. The aquamarine vortex rotated more and more violently. The huge energy aura could easily absorb a part of the combined energy of the 3 of them every time. If it wasn't for Chiyu's origin of nature that could quickly absorb energy from the air, he would probably be drained after a few times. Moreover, his own strength was so strong that he would probably be completely drained after a few times. A faint light flickered, and Chiyu's eyes revealed a trace of tyrannical strength. Facing the large absorption of the Kunlun mirrors, he didn't feel the slightest bit weakened. In particular, the Thundercloud Force and the Thundercloud Force were 2 types of energy that were close to the true 9 clouds level, and they constantly absorbed the energy molecules in the air. It was as if they were plundering. With the Dragon Field Courtyard as the center, all the energy molecules within a radius of a few hundred square kilometers began to fluctuate violently, frantically gathering towards Chiyu's position. Even so, because Chiyu's absorption speed was too fast, there was often an energy vacuum around his body. The increase in energy became more and more intense, and the surrounding words began to distort. The fairy in the mirror's face became unusually calm, as if the energy had nothing to do with her. She kept chanting more clearly. There seemed to be some excitement in the depths of her eyes. Yes, as one of the 10 great artifacts, she didn't know how long it had been since she had received enough energy to fully unleash her strength. At this moment, Chiyu had given her such an ability. The feeling of being filled with energy, of being able to fully unleash the power of the Kunlun mirrors, was so wonderful. At this moment, she felt that Chiyu didn't seem so annoying anymore. At least, he had enough strength to satisfy her. The fairy in the mirror even thought that if she had chosen Chiyu as her master, would have been better. However, she quickly dispelled this thought. How could that ruffian be compared to the pure and clean Snow Girl? Although Snow Girl was also tempted by him, Chiyu naturally didn't know what the fairy in the mirror was thinking. At this moment, he was transferring energy, and at the same time, he felt a strong change in his own strength. Ever since he had ascended to his current realm, he had never fully unleashed the power of his body and mind. At this moment, through the intense output of energy, he could clearly feel that his strength had reached an extremely high level. Although it couldn't be compared to the Bull Demon King, it was already much, much stronger than his previous self. Finally, when the turquoise vortex of light opened up above their heads to a diameter of 3 meters, the fairy in the mirror's chanting came to an abrupt end. All the energy fluctuations stopped at that moment, and even the turquoise energy that had been spinning at a high speed went against the laws of nature and entered a state of stillness. All the turquoise light disappeared at the same time, and the next moment, the fairy in the mirror had reintegrated into her body of Kunlun mirrors. In the process of integration, Snow Girl's body was brought along by her energy, and she turned around in Chiyu's arms. The two of them hugged each other, and a huge energy aura immediately rose. The turquoise light flashed. Like a silk thread, it was sucked into the 3-meter diameter hole and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Chiyu's spiritual energy was maintained in a state of high alert. When the fairy in the mirror finished chanting, the huge energy aura instantly solidified, and his output naturally stopped. The next moment, they had already begun the process of transmigration. This was different from the time when they went to the ancient behemoth. The moment the huge energy fluctuations condensed, it enveloped the Snow Girl's body. Chiyu and the Snow Lady's bodies were enveloped within it, and the transmigration soon began. At this moment, Chiyu discovered that the energy around him and the Snow Lady had suddenly become as gentle as water, and the surroundings had completely turned into a dark green world. This didn't seem to be transmigration, because the feeling of the energy was completely different. It wasn't the kind of shuttling through space and time, but it was like swimming slowly in a swimming pool. There was a faint energy aura. Every fluctuation produced a clear effect, and the surrounding turquoise waves seemed to constantly sweep past the two of them. And these turquoise waves would not really touch their bodies. This seemed to be the effect of a layer of faint turquoise light around their bodies. Feeling the gentle energy aura around them, Chiyu was surprised to find that the energy that he and Snow Girl had consumed when they were transferring energy to the Kunlun mirrors was actually recovering quickly. It was not surprising that he could recover. After all, as long as there was energy, his origin of nature could easily absorb and transform it. But the situation with Snow Girl had become very strange. He did not transfer energy to her, and only used his own energy to protect her, but her energy had already recovered. Although he did not know what was going on, it was still a good thing, and it boosted Chiyu's confidence a little. The turquoise light was very gentle, and the feeling of swimming made Chiyu feel very comfortable. In this space, the concept of time seemed to have become blurred. At least, Chiyu could not feel the existence of time. The faint light was constantly flashing. Snow Girl was in Chiyu's arms, so she naturally had nothing to worry about. Unknowingly, she actually fell asleep in Chiyu's arms, just as Chiyu was guessing where the Eastern Emperor Bell was. The immortal in the mirror's voice suddenly sounded in his heart. Chiyu, I have something to say to you. I have already hypnotized Snow Girl, and I think we can talk now. Chiyu was stunned. Senior, please speak. The immortal in the mirror said, the place where the Eastern Emperor Bell is located is an extremely dangerous place. If you want to see it, you have to go through a test. Hearing this, Chiyu could not help but reveal a trace of a bitter smile. Another test. When I first obtained the Xin Yuan sword and the Kong Tong seal, I also had to go through a test. Oh, and you Kunlu mirrors. Is this the model of the 10 great godly weapons? The immortal in the mirror said, yes, the seal of the 10 great godly weapons determines the test. However, there is one thing I must tell you first. As the head of the 10 great godly weapons, the Eastern Emperor Bell will not recognize a master. When you see Dong Wang, do not have any covetous thoughts, or you will die a terrible death. He is not as easy to talk to as I am. You're easy to talk to? Chiyu thought to himself, but he naturally could not say this now. He nodded and said, Senior, please do not worry about this. I originally did not expect to obtain the Eastern Emperor Bell. I only hoped to go to the realm of the gods with its help. This time, I have troubled Senior. The immortal in the mirror said, I do not want to help you. I only want to help Snow Girl. Who asked this girl to fall in love with a kid like you? There is only one test for the Eastern Emperor Bell. As long as you pass this test, you will be able to see it. As for whether it is willing to help you, it will depend on your own ability. If you can convince it, it will naturally not be a problem. Otherwise, I am afraid it will be impossible for you to come back. When the time comes, I will not appear. When you see Don Wang, do not mention my existence. Please remember this. Otherwise, I will not help you in the future." Chi Yu's heart stirred, and he said, "Senior, do you have any grudges with the Eastern Emperor Bell?" The immortal in the mirror was silent for a while, and said, "You do not need to care about this. You just need to do as I say. The test of the Eastern Emperor Bell is not too difficult. It is only to test your strength. It is not as complicated as my Kunlun divine fantasy." Chi Yu asked curiously, "What is the test of the Eastern Emperor Bell?" The immortal in the mirror said indifferently, "You will be considered to have passed the test if you kill 100,000 celestial soldiers and generals." "Ah, that is not very difficult," Chi Yu said helplessly. "Then how are these celestial soldiers and generals compared to the Burning Hell Legion?" He had already fought with the Burning Hell Legion many times. If the celestial soldiers and generals of the Eastern God world were similar in strength, there should not be too much of a problem. After all, once one's strength reached a certain level, quantity was no longer very important. The immortal in the mirror snorted disdainfully and said, "How can those trash be compared to the celestial soldiers and generals? You are underestimating the true God world. Although these celestial soldiers and generals are just energy bodies produced by the Eastern Emperor Bell, their strength is not much different from the celestial soldiers and generals of the God world. As to how strong they are, you can experience it yourself. I will not say more. Don't you have many partners? You can also ask them for help. However, if you ask them to help you, and the Eastern Emperor Bell does not agree to your request, then you will not be the only one who will be destroyed. Don't think that the Kongtong seal can protect them. In front of the Eastern Emperor Bell, other than the Xianyuan sword and Panga's axe, the other divine weapons are nothing to him. Moreover, in his domain, the Kongtong seal will not be able to protect you and your people." Chi nodded and said, "I understand. Since that is the case, let me do it myself." At this point, Chi Yu's expression became a little more serious, but he was not afraid at all. To him, this was a challenge. If he could not even pass the test of 100,000 celestial soldiers and generals, then what right did he have to go to the God world? What right did he have to fight with the Demon Bull King? All right, we're almost there. After entering the domain of the Eastern Emperor Bell, you don't need to ask anything. You just need to keep moving forward. When there is no one stopping you, it means that you have passed. You will be able to see everything you want to see. Now, please keep the Snow Girl and the Kongtong seal. This is the only way that the Eastern Emperor Bell will not be able to sense her aura." Chi Yu said, "Senior, you said that you would not let her get hurt. Don't tell me that we have to protect her in the Kongtong seal." The celestial being in the mirror said grandly, "Yes. Otherwise, do you think I can fight against the Eastern Emperor Bell?" Chi Yu sighed in his heart. It seemed that he could only rely on his own strength this time. He did not blame the Kunlun mirrors for not helping him. After all, the Kunlun mirrors was already very kind of him to bring him to the Eastern Emperor Bell. It was imbued with a huge amount of energy from his soul. It could easily tear apart the Burning Legion, even if they were warriors like the two black generals. However, he could feel that the golden armored soldiers that were sent flying were only slightly injured. Their energy was slightly weakened, but they were not injured at all. Even the golden spears in their hands had only dimmed a little. So powerful. Would he really be able to deal with 100,000 warriors of such a level at once? Just as the first wave of golden armored soldiers were sent flying, the second wave of attacks arrived. They did not even give Chi Yu a chance to breathe. The same sharpness, the same impact, and the emotionless, murderous aura immediately caused Chi Yu to fall into another crisis. However, the subsequent attacks made Chi Yu's fighting spirit soar. He knew that he could not waste too much energy. Otherwise, even if he had the source of nature, he might not be able to survive in front of 100,000 soldiers. Kill. He had to kill. Every time he killed an enemy, the resistance to his advancement would be greatly reduced. Come. With a loud shout, Chi Yu suddenly took a step forward with his right foot. In an instant, an unstoppable, huge amount of energy erupted. Chi-Yu's right fist rushed forward, and Kieran's arm appeared. The silver-black light formed a huge ball of light and exploded. Due to the surging energy, the second attack of the golden-armored soldiers was sent flying in an instant. However, this time, they did not have any chance to return. They were torn to pieces by Kieran's tyrannical energy in midair, turning into golden spots of light and disappearing. At the same time, the huge energy aura instantly converged. Right in front of Chi-Yu, Kieran's arm exploded with a terrifying attack. With a single punch, there was no longer a single golden-armored soldier in the space that was about 5 meters wide and 100 meters long. Chi-Yu's expression became calm. Using this momentary gap, he did not rush forward. Instead, he called out his Kieran's original mutation. Directly entering the double mutation, Chi-Yu's own attack and defense instantly increased by several times. The massacre began. This was a real massacre. Although the enemies they faced were all energy bodies, they were much stronger than physical warriors. With this gap, Chi-Yu naturally would not give them a chance to surround him. His figure flashed, and he flew into the sky. Boom! The huge shock almost made Chi-Yu spit out blood. His body hadn't even reached a height of 3 meters when he violently collided with a barrier. The incomparably sturdy barrier was filled with elasticity, and Chi-Yu's body bounced back at an even faster speed. In the blink of an eye, he heavily crashed into the ground 3 meters below where he was previously standing. Another rumble sounded. This time, Chi-Yu could not help but feel dizzy, and he could see stars in front of his eyes. 2 words suddenly appeared in his mind. Seal. That's right, it was a seal. This space was not as vast as he had imagined. At least, the space above and below him was not big, and it was only 7 or 8 meters high. Fortunately, Chi-Yu did not rush at full speed. Otherwise, he might have been knocked unconscious by the sudden impact. Oh, I forgot to tell you that this space is sealed by the Bell of the East Emperor. Unless you can break through the encirclement of 100,000 celestial soldiers, it's impossible to fly out of here. The highest altitude of this space is only 10 meters. That's right, the immortal in the mirror said with a hint of schadenfreude. Why didn't you say so earlier? That collision just now was Chi-Yu's own energy collision. It made him miserable. At this time, he could not care less about blaming the mirror immortal, because the golden-armored warriors had used this short time to rush forward again. This time, there was a change in their attack. The closest golden-armored warriors spread out at the same time, completely filling up the entire space that was less than 10 meters wide, not leaving a single gap for Chi-Yu. Then, countless sharp golden lights shot toward Chi-Yu with an ear-piercing sound. F***CK. Chi-Yu turned his body, and a black and silver light shone from his left hand. With the support of his energy, the Kieran's mirror immediately exerted its greatest power. This time, Chi-Yu was lucky. The Kieran's mirror's ability was not only for defense, but also for reflection. In an instant, Chi-Yu naturally could not use it to protect every part of his body. However, with his speed, at least 80% of the golden lights were blocked by the Kieran's mirror. In an instant, the golden lights scattered in all directions, reflecting in the direction from which they came. Facing so many enemies, Chi-Yu did not need to aim at all. The huge energy light was returned to the golden-armored warriors in an instant. As for the excess energy, it was directly neutralized by Chi-Yu's protective thundercloud force. More than 10 golden lights scattered, and another 10 golden-armored warriors were destroyed by their own power. He increased his speed again, and Chi-Yu's dizzy head had regained its clarity. Kieran's mirror with his left hand, Kieran's illusion with his right, and Kieran's travel with his feet. With a psychedelic figure, he pounced toward the golden-armored warriors in front of him, since there was no possibility of a trick. Then, let's have a real battle. The faint light became brighter, and the huge energy wave filled Chi-Yu's body with a strong aura. Kieran's illusion also transformed into a huge shield, and together with the Kieran's mirror, his body was completely protected. At the same time, these 2 shields became his best weapons. The edge of the shield was as sharp as a huge battle axe. Although the attacks of the golden-armored warriors could threaten Chi-Yu, he was no longer afraid after entering the second stage of origin mutation. He rushed into the group of golden-armored warriors, and the two shields first blocked their attacks. Then, they turned into death scythes that reaped lives. The two huge shields danced up and down, and wherever they passed, golden light exploded and turned into a golden rain of light. Chi-Yu did not use energy attacks because that would consume a lot of his energy. At this moment, he channeled his thundercloud force into the two shields in his hands. The energy in the Kirin's mirror was of the fire attribute, while the energy in the Kirin's illusion was of the thunder attribute. The two most destructive thundercloud force were contained in the shields. As soon as the golden-armored warriors touched them, they would immediately be cut into light spots and disappear. The killing continued. These golden-armored warriors did not have any emotions at all. Their only goal was to destroy the enemies in front of them. They attacked tirelessly, causing Chi-Yu to fall into a bitter battle. Even ants could kill an elephant if there were enough of them. Although Chi-Yu's energy was very strong, there was still a limit to it. The attack power of these golden-armored warriors was extremely terrifying. If he was still Chi-Yun, he would probably be exhausted after an hour. Even now, after persisting for 4 hours, at least tens of thousands of golden-armored warriors had died in his hands. After that, Chi-Yu's origin of nature was no longer enough to recover the energy in his body. His energy became weaker and weaker, and the pressure from the attacks around him also became heavier. Chi-Yu knew that he was about to be exhausted. The attacks of the golden-armored warriors were very simple. They attacked seamlessly. They did not know what it meant to save energy. Every attack was an all-out attack. No matter how strong the shield's defense was, it was impossible to withstand such a powerful attack forever. On the Qilin mirror and Qilin illusion, there were already signs of damage. At this time, Chi-Yu saw that the golden-armored warriors in front of him were still endless. He did not know how many of them there were. The killing continued, and 70% of the 4 types of thundercloud force in his body had been consumed. At this time, Chi-Yu had already been in this world for 5 hours. Although his energy could not increase during the battle, under this huge pressure, Chi-Yu's combat skills were the best training. After all, he could not find such an opponent anywhere. Although the attacks of the golden-armored warriors covered seamlessly, Chi-Yu avoided them as much as possible when dealing with them. He avoided the most violent parts of the attacks and tried to reduce his own consumption as much as possible. At this time, the battle had entered a white-hot state. Unfortunately, no matter how much energy he saved, Chi-Yu had to endure the state where the energy in his body was almost exhausted. He knew that if this continued, he would be killed by these guys in front of him sooner or later. What should he do? There was no other way. Unless he used the doppelganger domain, he could still hold on for a while. However, until the last moment, Chi-Yu was unwilling to use the doppelganger domain. After all, it was his last resort. The doppelganger domain could not be used outside for long. A short period of time was not enough for him to recover his energy. Moreover, the doppelganger domain could only be used once. He had to wait until his energy was completely recovered before he could use it again. With his current strength, using the doppelganger domain was like drinking poison to quench thirst. As for the shapeless Big Dipper realm technique, it was not that Chi-Yu did not want to use it. When he was about to use this domain to help him get through this difficult situation, he was surprised to find that the energy on Kirin illusion was completely suppressed. As he fought, he asked the Kunlun mirrors and found out that in this world, unless it was the domain of a divine artifact or his own domain, other artifacts that were lower than the divine artifact level could not use the power of the domain. Could he only wait for death? Of course not. As the king of his Zodiacs, Chi-Yu had gone through countless hardships. How could this be the only ability he had? The silver light expanded like the sun in an instant and completely enveloped the surrounding area of 3 meters. Chi-Yu did not even look at the golden-armored warriors around him and directly sat down cross-legged. Strangely enough, as soon as the attacks of the golden-armored warriors came into contact with the silver light, They immediately disappeared and could no longer pose any threat to Chi-Yu. Chapter 343. Rascal, this move again. The immortal in the mirror snorted in Chi-Yu's mind. Chi-Yu smiled bitterly. Without this move, I would have died sooner or later. This is the combination of wisdom and power. The immortal in the mirror didn't say anything. In fact, she naturally knew that Chi-Yu couldn't defeat 100,000 celestial soldiers and generals head-on. Even the Bull Demon King couldn't do it without the Pangu Axe and the Clear Sky Pagoda. However, she still brought Chi-Yu here. It was because Chi-Yu had the Silver Dragon cover. Although the immortal in the mirror didn't like Chi-Yu was the Snow Girl's lover after all. At least she wouldn't harm Chi-Yu. Without the hindrance of his attacks, Chi-Yu only needed an hour to regain his vigor and vitality. He had suddenly thought of the Silver Dragon cover in the face of the huge pressure just now. If he didn't use the Silver Dragon cover, then he could only rely on the Kongtong Seal's Undying Divine Dragon and Undying Domain. That was the situation that Chi-Yu didn't want to see the most. Before he saw the Bell of the East Emperor, the Kongtong Seal and the Kunlun Mirrors were his secret weapons. He absolutely didn't want to expose them prematurely. With the Silver Dragon cover as a safeguard, this time, Chi-Yu didn't have any worries. Energy recovered. Inside the Silver Dragon cover, Chi-Yu put his palms together in front of his chest, and the energy in his body began to circulate wildly. Although it was fun to kill people with hand-to-hand combat, it was too slow. He didn't want to waste any more time. The huge energy aura emitted a terrifying feeling. The four colors of the thundercloud force turned into one, and the purple light became more and more intense, even turning black. The huge and tyrannical energy aura kept rising from Chi-Yu's body. After a while, Chi-Yu's figure had disappeared inside the Silver Dragon cover, and there was only a huge purplish-black light ball on the ground. So what if they're heavenly soldiers and generals? I'll show you what Violet Knight Heavenly Lightning is. It was one of the super abilities of the Thundercloud Force that Chi-Yu had comprehended himself. The weakness of the Purple Knight Heavenly Thunder was that it took too long to gather. Ball Lightning was the foundation. After being compressed and condensed, Chi-Yu improved it himself and completely converted the other three types of Thundercloud Force into Thundercloud Force, increasing the power of the Purple Knight Heavenly Thunder to the limit. However, converting the energy required time, and activating the power of the Purple Knight Heavenly Thunder also required time. Therefore, to the usual Chi-Yu, this was just a useless ability. After all, an enemy that could force him to use such a tyrannical attack would naturally not be much weaker than him. No one would wait for him to gather such terrifying energy before launching an attack. Because of this, Chi-Yu had never used it. It was only in theory. However, the situation before them was different. Although these heavenly soldiers and generals were powerful, they were all energy bodies. Even the spears in their hands were in the form of energy. There was no way they could get past the Silver Dragon shield and hurt Chi-Yu. Therefore, he had plenty of time to accumulate energy, and all of it. Lin Bing Doja Jie Zhun Lai Zai. Purple Knight Heavenly Thunder, go! With a loud shout, Chi-Yu used the Buddhist incantation of 9 secret words to compress the purple energy around him for the last time. In the next moment, the Silver Dragon barrier around his body disappeared. The disappearance of the Silver Dragon barrier immediately attracted the frenzied attacks of the golden-armored warriors. However, something strange happened. Although the Silver Dragon barrier was gone, the attacks of the golden-armored warriors disappeared as soon as they came into contact with a huge purplish-black ball of light. After all, these energy bodies did not have high intelligence, so fear would not appear in them. In the next moment, a huge purplish-black light flew out. A huge amount of energy, with Chi-Yu at the center, exploded. When humans used a nuclear bomb for the first time, the shocking effect shocked the world. The powerful destructive power could destroy countless lives. And the Purple Knight Heavenly Thunder that exploded in front of Chi-Yu was equivalent to the Divine Realm's nuclear bomb. With his strength that surpassed the 8 clouds, even the Bull Demon King could only escape as fast as he could when faced with an attack released with all his energy. God-level power exploded. Based on Chi-Yu's current situation, Unless he used the ultimate Kirin arm, it would be impossible for him to have an attack that exceeded this level. Strangely, the purplish-black light did not produce any explosions. Everywhere it passed, not even golden spots appeared. The surroundings became clear. Chiyu did not know how many heavenly soldiers and generals this attack had destroyed. The explosion of energy as the center of the purple night heavenly thunder was not attacked by the energy backlash. This was the strange thing about the purple night heavenly thunder. Chiyu could not have developed a suicidal ability, could he? Large numbers of golden soldiers disappeared wherever the purplish-black light passed. At least, everything in front of him seemed to have turned into nothingness. Even the seals above and below his feet trembled violently. The entire space became distorted as if it could collapse at any time. The silver dragon barrier lit up once more and enveloped Chiyu. Closing his eyes, he calmly did not observe his surroundings. Instead, he used the fastest speed to circulate the energy of the origin of nature to recover what he had just expended. Chiyu knew that no matter how many enemies this attack had destroyed, as long as this continued, he would eventually destroy all the golden soldiers around him. If this was on Earth, the explosive power of the Purple Night heavenly thunder could at least destroy a small country. It would be like the Sun Nation being drowned by a tsunami. If there was the explosive power of the Purple Night heavenly thunder, it would probably be able to blast that country into two. When that happened, it would not be a problem of a tsunami, but the entire country would sink. However, the celestial soldiers and celestial generals were, after all, experts from the immortal world. Even under such destructive power, they were not able to withstand it. The number of heavenly soldiers and generals that died was about the same as the number that Chiyu had killed in the previous 6 hours. Of course, this was already the most efficient way for Chiyu to destroy them. Compared to the previous 6 hours of killing, this short 10 minutes of energy condensation was much more direct and faster. The golden soldiers did not know what fear was. Therefore, when Chiyu began to cultivate, they had already surrounded him from afar. For some unknown reason, even though he was cultivating, Chiyu could clearly feel an even greater pressure coming from the outside world. Immediately after, the silver dragon shield produced a subtle buzzing sound. Chiyu opened his eyes instinctively and his heart sank. This time, there were not only the golden soldiers around him. At the same time, there were also some silver-armored puppets. They were soldiers that were about 2 meters tall. Unlike the golden soldiers, the weapons in their hands were heavy swords, although they were also condensed from energy. However, the long swords in their hands seemed to have a physical form of energy. They bombarded the silver dragon shield again and again, causing it to tremble. One had to know that the silver dragon shield was immune to energy. Being able to produce such an effect could only mean one thing. These energy attacks were close to a physical form. Physical objects were also a form of energy. However, to be able to condense energy to such an extent, their strength was definitely terrifying. There were not many silver-armored puppets, about 1/10 of the number of gold-armored puppets. However, it was obvious that the gold-armored puppets obeyed their orders. The silver-armored puppets were at the forefront. The heavy swords kept bombarding the silver dragon shield. Although it was not enough to cause enough damage, the huge threat was enough to make Chiyu's heart tremble. Senior Immortal in the mirror. What's going on? Chiyu called out in his heart. He knew that the Immortal in the mirror's aura was connected to his. The Immortal in the mirror's gloating voice was heard. Nothing. Isn't it just the heavenly soldiers and generals? What about the silver-armored puppets? Are they heavenly soldiers and generals as well? Chiyu asked impatiently. The Immortal in the mirror said, I made it very clear just now. You have to completely destroy the heavenly soldiers and generals in front of you. If there are heavenly soldiers, there must be heavenly generals and generals. Otherwise, do you think it's that easy? The gold-armored puppets are heavenly soldiers, while the silver-armored puppets are heavenly generals. You're on your own. Although your domain is immune to energy, these heavenly generals are extremely powerful. They are at least at the level of a demigod. Their energy is completely condensed and close to a physical form. I think that if your energy shield doesn't have more energy to support it, it will be broken sooner or later. Chiyu's brows slightly furrowed as he thought to himself. To be able to condense the energy of a weapon to such a degree, it had probably already surpassed his teacher, the Yellow Emperor. After all, even the Yellow Emperor had not been able to do this back then. The Eastern Emperor Bell was indeed the top of the 10 great divine weapons. The heavenly generals formed in his domain were already so powerful. As he thought about this, Chiyu had no choice but to pour more energy into the Silver Dragon shield to stabilize the situation. However, the energy was dispersed, which would definitely slow down his recovery. Just as he was about to continue condensing energy, he heard the immortal in the mirror say, "Oh, right. You have to be careful. I'll tell you now, so that you won't blame me later." The heavenly soldiers and generals naturally have commander. In the immortal realm, strength has always been respected. If you want to pass this test, you naturally have to defeat all of them. The last one is the commander of the heavenly soldiers and generals. He is in an energy body, but a physical body that was left in the Eastern Emperor Bell. Your domain won't work. Chiyu was speechless. He hated the immortal in his heart, but since he was already here, he had to face all possible dangers. He could only continue. Under the protection of the Silver Dragon shield, Chiyu used almost twice the amount of time to successfully condense energy again. He didn't change his strategy and attacked with the Purple Knight Heavenly Thunder. So what if they were silver-armored heavenly generals? Their low-level intelligence wasn't enough to pose a threat to the Purple Knight Heavenly Thunder. Another empty space appeared. At this point, Chiyu actually hoped that there would be more heavenly generals when he attacked. That way, it would be easier to destroy them. After all, in the face of the Purple Knight Heavenly Thunder, destroying the heavenly soldiers and generals was the same, and the amount of energy consumed was the same. When he used the Purple Knight Heavenly Thunder for the third time, the number of gold-armored heavenly soldiers had decreased significantly. More silver-armored heavenly generals had appeared outside the Silver Dragon shield. As the number of heavenly generals increased, the pressure on the Silver Dragon shield increased, so Chiyu had no choice but to use more time to recover his strength. The battle continued. It was a long and arduous battle. When the surrounding enemies turned into heavenly generals, the effect of the Purple Knight Heavenly Thunder was greatly reduced. When these silver-armored heavenly generals were destroyed, they would emit a powerful silver light to resist part of the power of the Purple Knight Heavenly Thunder. When facing the gold-armored heavenly soldiers, Chiyu could destroy about 10,000 of them at a time. When the enemies turned into heavenly generals, he could only destroy about 1,000 of them at a time. He tried to destroy these heavenly generals through physical combat, but to Chiyu's surprise, these heavenly generals were extremely skilled in combat, and their energy was very condensed. Even the weapons that Kirin conjured could not destroy the heavy swords in their hands. He could only kill them one by one with his tyrannical strength. The effect and speed were not as fast as the Purple Knight Heavenly Thunder, so he had no choice but to give up on physical combat and continue to rely on the Silver Dragon shield and the Purple Knight Heavenly Thunder to continue destroying the enemies. Although it took a long time, the heavenly soldiers and generals would be completely destroyed if this went on. Even Chiyu did not know how much time had passed. He kept repeating the process of absorbing energy and releasing the heavenly thunder. He realized that the speed at which the source of nature was converting energy was gradually increasing. Perhaps it was because of the huge pressure from the outside world. This discovery caused him to finally be a little more interested and confident in facing the boring battle. Although the speed at which he converted energy could not increase his strength, it made his endurance in battle even more terrifying. Coupled with the continuous release of the Purple Knight Heavenly Thunder, the thundercloud force in his body became more solid than before, and his strength improved imperceptibly. Finally, the number of silver-armored heavenly generals became fewer and fewer, and the number of enemies could be seen completely. Just as Chiyu was about to release the Purple Knight Heavenly Thunder again, he saw a warrior in red armor standing in the distance, looking at him coldly. However, he did not attack him together with the silver-armored warriors. "Commander?" Is he the commander of the heavenly soldiers and generals? Chi could not help but be shocked when he saw this person, because he realized that when he used his mind power to probe him, he actually could not see through the other party's strength. There were golden patterns on the red armor, and the halo was very dim, but very clear. Although he was just looking at it, it gave Chi a lot of pressure. This person was holding a long sword in his hand, and both his hands were pressed on the hilt of the sword. The long sword was hanging upside down in the air, and his aura did not lock onto Chi. It was as if he was waiting for something. God-rank strength was Chi-Yu's only judgment. At the very least, the strength of this commander was definitely not below Satan's. His sharp gaze and cold aura all showed that he was very powerful. This time, Chi-Yu did not use the Purple Knight Heavenly Thunder again. When his energy recovered, he maintained the power of the Silver Dragon Shield while carefully observing the commander. The immortal in the mirror had already said that this person had a physical body, or rather, he was a true god. If Luo Yunyang used the Purple Knight Heavenly Thunder and his energy was completely depleted, then even if he had the Kongtong Seal and the Clone Domain, he might not be able to escape unscathed. For a moment, the situation was in a stalemate. Chi-Yu hesitated. Should he rush over and fight the commander, or should he destroy the silver-armored Heavenly General first? There were only about 3,000 silver-armored Heavenly Generals left. What are you waiting for? Why aren't you continuing? The immortal in the mirror's voice rang out again. She had already made Chi-Yu feel a little annoyed. What do you think I am waiting for? Don't you see the guy outside? He's here. If I use up my energy, how am I supposed to deal with his attacks? Chi-Yu said angrily. The immortal in the mirror snorted. You are underestimating the sky gods of the East. Do you think that he will gang up on you with his subordinates? His dignity will not allow him to do that. Don't worry and attack. He will only attack after the last silver-armored Heavenly General is destroyed. Chi-Yu's heart immediately relaxed after hearing the mirror immortal's words. He had sufficient confidence in himself against just one enemy, even if the opponent was a god. The Purple Knight Heavenly Thunder exploded 3 times in a row. A long time had passed. At this time, there were only about a dozen silver-armored Heavenly Generals left. His energy was restored, but the black armor on Chi-Yu's body changed. The reddish-gold light made the armor look dazzling. A huge energy aura shot up into the sky. He let out a long roar. Without the silver dragon shield, a huge Kirin shadow appeared behind him. His body had already rushed out like lightning. Kirin illusion. It transformed into the form of the Xianyuan sword and brought with it a reddish-gold light in the air. The 4 types of thundercloud force completely fused with Kirin's origin, instantly raising Chi-Yu's energy to the limit. The reddish-gold light flashed, and the bodies of the last dozen silver-armored Heavenly Generals completely froze. In the next moment, they had already exploded into balls of silver light. At this time, Chi-Yu's body had already appeared 100 meters behind them, facing the commander from afar. The reddish-gold light also dyed Kirin illusion. At this time, Chi-Yu's heart was very calm. They had been fighting here for a long time, at least more than 10 days on Earth. In the process of continuous fighting, they had been fighting for a long time. In the process of continuous fighting, his senses and all aspects had been raised to their optimal state. That armor, just now, was like a sheep's horn. There were no traces left, and the energy aura that was originally released was now completely restrained. Staring at the commander in front of him, Chi-Yu's expression was very cold. He seemed no different from the other party. You are very powerful. It has been many years, but you are the first human to come here. Although I don't know how you came here, the final result will not change. However, the final outcome would not change. The dignity of a god cannot be violated. If you had been willing to leave before, perhaps I would have been lenient and let you go. However, you have now crossed the bottom line of a god. Unless you destroy me, you can only die here and transform into a silver-armored Heavenly General. An emotionless voice spat out from the commander's mouth. Looking at Chi-Yu, he slowly raised his longsword with both hands. The pressure suddenly disappeared, and all that was left was a sharpness that shocked Chi-Yu. He was the owner of the Xianyuan sword, so he naturally knew what kind of energy the sharpest weapon in the world could produce. However, the aura that the commander in front of him exuded was actually no weaker than when he had used the Xianyuan sword. Of course, this was only in terms of the sharpness of sword. The commander in front of him was much stronger than him back then. The sword in his hand, naturally, could not compare to the Xianyuan sword. After all, he had not been able to unleash the true power of the Xianyuan sword back then. However, no matter what, his weapon was still much stronger than Kiran Huan's. "Are you the only intelligent creature here?" Chi Yu asked calmly. Kiran Huan held his sword with both hands and held it horizontally in front of him. The red and gold lights formed two distinct sides in the air, but they did not touch. The commander snorted coldly. "How dare you call me that?" Chi Yu shrugged and said, "Why not? You did not tell me your name." "You want to know my name? Fine, I will tell you. My name is Bai Qi. I have only been here for a few thousand years," Bai Qi said calmly. Chi Yu was stunned. He frowned and said, "This name sounds familiar. The Bell of the East Emperor has existed for tens of millions of years. How did you come here for a few thousand years?" Bai Qi slowly raised his head and looked at the sky. He sighed. "So, the world has long forgotten my existence. Can't you see that I am also a human?" Suddenly, a thought flashed in his mind. Chi Yu's body trembled. "You are Bai Qi, the Bai Qi of the Qin Kingdom, the god of death who killed 400,000 soldiers." The sword in Bai Qi's hand trembled slightly. "So you do know me?" Chi Yu felt a huge explosion in his mind. Bai Qi. He was Bai Qi, the strongest god of death in the history of Yin Huang, and the cruelest general in human history. He had naturally heard of Bai Qi's name. Although Bai Qi could not be compared to Emperor Huang in his heart, the word god of death was enough to shock him. "Since you are a human, why are you here?" Chi Yu asked in surprise. "What about you? Aren't you here as well?" "You are the same as me, a human. I am here. I only have one goal, and that is to live up to my nickname. That is why I am here," Bai Qi said coldly. God of death, did you come here to kill God?" Chi Yu looked at Bai Qi in surprise. The man in front of him actually had such courage. No wonder the chi on his body gave him such a terrifying feeling. He couldn't feel his energy. However, the sharpness of his body caused Chi Yu to be on guard. At this moment, Chi Yu's soul suddenly trembled. He finally understood why the sharpness in front of him was so strong. It was not formed by energy, and the key was not the sword, but the killing intent. The sharpness was completely formed by the killing intent on Bai Qi's body. Taking a deep breath, he barely managed to calm his heart. "Then did you succeed?" Chi Yu asked in a deep voice. Bai Qi laughed at himself and said, "God no longer exists. Even if I could do it, who would I kill? However, I failed. So, I still stayed here and became the commander of these heavenly soldiers." A light flashed in Chi Yu's eyes. "You lost to the Eastern Emperor Bell?" Bai Qi raised his head. At this moment, only then did Chi Yu truly see his eyes. His eyes were white. They were completely emotionless. "Yes." A simple answer. Chi Yu nodded and said, "Okay, I understand." Bai Qi said, "He could have killed me, but he did not do so. He said that my strength has already reached the level of God. Unless I kill myself, there are no true gods in this world for me to kill. However, if I stay here, I will have a chance. Because as long as it is a true god, one day they will come here." Chi Yu smiled. "So you want to kill me now?" "Yes." It was still a one-word answer. However, this time, the sword in Bai Qi's hand slowly descended from above his head. At that moment, Chi Yu felt that the originally cold air had instantly turned cold, and the smell of blood assaulted his senses. The god of slaughter, Bai Qi, was not killed by Qin Shi Huang. When his killing intent could no longer be satiated in the human world, he came here to challenge the gods of the celestial realm. Seeing this brazen killing intent, Chi Yu could not help but feel a sense of admiration. Crimson gold armor shone with light. The experienced Chi Yu knew very well what was needed to fight against an enemy of this level. All the energy was concentrated on the Kirin fantasy. The Kirin fantasy trembled slightly and emitted a buzzing sound. Under the influence of the massive amount of energy, It was beginning to show signs of being unable to bear it. After all, it was not a true divine artifact. It could not become a god's weapon. Bai Qi moved. Only his sword moved. Blood-red light shone as it slashed down at Qiyu. Qiyu moved as well. He, too, moved his sword. Both his hands rose up and a crimson gold light shone out, bringing with it a lightning-like slash. In an instant, the energy was compressed to the limit. There was no sound. The red and crimson gold lights disappeared in the air at the same time. The two of them were still standing there. However, they were now wielding their swords with their right hands. The tips of their swords were pointed at the ground. They looked at each other. Qiyu's eyes were calm, but Bai Qi's white eyes were bloodshot. With a bang, the Kirin fantasy in Qiyu's hand turned into motes of light and disappeared. This time, it was no longer damaged. It was truly destroyed. The most powerful weapon in the Kirin octatic treasures, the Kirin fantasy, was destroyed just like that. It could never be repaired again. A crack extended from the middle finger of Qiyu's right hand all the way to his right shoulder. With another bang, the scarlet gold armor on his right arm completely shattered, similarly turning into light and disappearing. A ghastly bloody wound appeared from his right shoulder to his right hand's middle finger. Fresh blood slowly flowed down along the wound, dripping onto the empty space. The black and silver lights revolved around Qiyu's right arm. The tattoo on his body had now completely shifted to his right arm. "Your energy is above mine," Bai Qi said. Qiyu said calmly, "However, I lost." Bai Qi said, "Do you know why you lost?" Qiyu nodded his head and replied, "I lost to your murderous intent. My killing intent is far inferior to yours. So I lost." Bai Qi said, "That's right. You only have killing intent, but not killing intent. In other words, I can completely ignore your killing intent. Killing intent is enough to destroy everything in the world, including gods. However, to be able to withstand my sword, you have indeed risen from a human to the realm of gods. However, this is only the one sword." Qiyu smiled and said, "Thank you, God of Slaughter, Bai Qi." Bai Qi was stunned and said, "Thank me?" Qiyu nodded and looked up at the empty sky, "Because you have given me a lot of things. Killing intent is everything to you. It is also your most powerful weapon. Even though your energy is inferior to mine, you still won the first sword. However, I'm different from you. I suddenly realized that I don't need killing intent because what I have is different from what you have. It is like we are two gods, but their divine powers are divided into water and fire. Perhaps we are two people who cannot tolerate each other." Bai Qi's gaze towards Qiyu turned somewhat strange. However, the veins in his eyes had also increased by a few notches. "Do you know what the result of our battle was?" Qiyu asked. Bai Qi nodded and said, "If you die, I die." Qiyu smiled faintly. "That's right. If you die, I die. Your murderous aura is enough to destroy me, but my more powerful energy can also tear you apart at the same time. Therefore, the result is a lose-lose situation. If I am still the same as before, then the result will not change." "Are you not the same as before?" Bai Qi said coldly. Qiyu nodded seriously and said, "Senior, do you know that there is a word called enlightenment in this world?" Bai Qi laughed crazily and said, "You are talking to me about enlightenment? Don't tell me you are enlightened." Qiyu still said seriously, "Yes, I am enlightened. Therefore, the ending between us will change. If the situation continues, when you slash the third sword, we will die at the same time. I will die under your sword, but you will die under the explosion of my doppelganger domain. However, it is different now because I am enlightened." Chapter 344. Qiyu nodded his head. This time, however, he did not say anything. Bai Qi smiled once more. This time, however, his smile was gentle. "All right, you have understood. I originally thought that in this world, there would no longer be an existence that could surpass me, so I stayed here alone, because I knew that no matter where I was, I would still be alone. However, you have understood. Thus, I'm no longer alone. My sword is the same as my title, the God of Slaughter. Come, let me see what you have comprehended." The long sword was completely dyed blood red. Bai Qi once again raised it high into the air as he stared at Qi Yu's body. This time, both of his eyes were the same as his sword, completely blood red. The surrounding killing intent had disappeared. In fact, it was no longer as sharp as before. However, Qi Yu knew that all of Bai Qi's killing intent had been condensed into that sword. The two of them were originally 100 meters apart. However, in the next instant, the space around them seemed to change, and they were now standing face to face. This time, the blood-red sword was not slashing. Instead, it was stabbing. All of the killing intent was condensed into a single point, into the tip of the sword. Perhaps only the god of slaughter, Bai Qi, could achieve such a feat. The sword froze. That was because a fist was blocking the tip of the sword. Black and silver light swirled around the fist. Qi Yu's aura was still as gentle as before. However, there was now an additional quality to his body that he did not possess before. The all-conquering killing intent froze in front of his fist. It had no chance to move forward. As for Qi Yu, he had no intention of moving forward either. The two of them were at the god level. They simply stood facing each other, staring at each other. Why? Even your weapon can't withstand my killing intent. So why can your fist? Bai Qi asked coldly. Qi Yu replied, Senior, do you still not understand? This is my epiphany, the moment I comprehended it. If there is no power or level that completely surpasses mine, then any enemy standing before me has no chance of winning, even if you are the god of slaughter. The blood-red light in Bai Qi's eyes gradually faded. The god-slaying sword in his hand let out a crisp sound. In the next moment, the sword turned into a blood-red light and disappeared. Bai Qi's shoulders shuddered slightly. He laughed. Transcend. You have indeed surpassed me. It seems that the potential of us humans is limitless after all. Perhaps, one day, the next person who comes here will also surpass you. What a pity. What's a pity? Qi Yu asked. Bai Qi replied coolly, a pity. Although you have surpassed me, it is impossible for you to surpass it. You can only stay here and take over my position. Wait for the next person to come. Qi Yu shook his head and said, No, I won't. There are only two possibilities for my ending. But stay here. But it doesn't fall within these two possibilities. Bai Qi said, Did you think that after coming here, I would not be able to escape? Will your fate still be in your own hands? Did you really think that I was willing to stay here? A trace of a smile appeared on Qi Yu's face. Elder, have you ever thought that it's precisely because you chose to stay here that there was a flaw in your killing intent? That's why you were defeated by me. Flaw? You said there was a flaw in my killing intent? If I did not have a flaw, I would not have lost to you just now. Perhaps you are right. Bai Qi said in a stupefied manner. Qi Yu shook his head and said, No, you are wrong again. Oh, I am wrong again. Where am I wrong? Qi Yu said, Even if there was no flaw in your killing intent, the final result would not have changed. The moment I comprehended it, it was already impossible for you to defeat me. A powerful airflow surged from Bai Qi's body, and his eyes turned blood-red again. Obviously, he was angry because of Qi Yu's contempt. However, he saw sincerity in Qi Yu's eyes. Qi Yu's clear eyes did not have the slightest bit of disdain. Instead, there was pity and respect. Am I really wrong? Can you tell me where I am wrong? Bai Qi asked in a daze. Qi Yu said, You are wrong. You chose the wrong direction. Bai Qi was stunned. Direction? What is the direction? What is the direction? Suddenly, he laughed crazily, and his right hand shot out in a strange trajectory. However, it was not aimed at Qi Yu, but at his own head. Even Qi Yu had no chance of stopping him at this point in time. The blood-red light spread from the top of Bai Qi's head to his feet. The armor on his body disappeared, and his whole body was shrouded in a blood-red light. Qi Yu said with a bitter smile, Senior, why did you do this? Bai Qi seemed to be relieved. He smiled and said, This is the best ending for me. I suddenly understand that you are right. Maybe I really did go in the wrong direction. I am known as the god of killing. Since everything is over, if I don't kill a god, how can I live up to my name? I can't kill you, so I might as well kill myself. God of killing, I finally killed a god, and I killed myself. There was a hint of sadness in his eyes. Qi Yu sighed and slowly walked past Bai Qi. He knew that Bai Qi could no longer stay in this world. Bai Qi did not move. His body was covered in the blood-red light, and he could no longer move. He suddenly asked loudly, "Kid, can you tell me what you have comprehended?" Qi stopped moving, but he did not look back. The benevolent are invincible. Qi Yu's figure disappeared. At this time, in this place, the only thing left was that blood-red light. The benevolent are invincible. The benevolent are invincible. Is this his comprehension, his path? Ha ha ha! The blood-red light dissipated. The 100,000 celestial soldiers that covered the sky and the earth had ended their mission. Feeling the life aura that had disappeared, Qi could not help but stop again. He looked up at the sky and muttered to himself, "Why bother? Why is the human heart so stubborn?" So what if you think about it a little more? If you take a step back, you will see the world. Qi stopped and looked up at the sky. His eyes were clear. Yes, the moment when the god of killing, Bai Qi, launched his first attack and destroyed Kiran's illusion. He had comprehended. If it was said that he only had a huge amount of energy in the past, then the current him had completely comprehended how to use this energy. In the past, whenever Qi Yu used his crimson gold armor, he would have a feeling. Logically speaking, he had 4 types of thundercloud force. He had more than any other Kiran in the past. Naturally, the strength of his energy was much stronger compared to Kiran in the past. However, every time he used the origin of nature to transform and fuse his own energy together with his Qilin's origin energy, the power of the clouds would increase a lot after fusing together. However, he could feel that the degree of improvement was far from the level of several types of cloud power added together, let alone a qualitative change. When he faced the god of killing, Bai Qi's attack, he suddenly understood. It was not that the power of the thundercloud force had decreased after the fusion. Rather, there was a problem with his application. When energy had been condensed to a certain extent, the human body would become a huge body of energy. How to unleash that energy would become a big problem. Qi did not know if Bull Demon King had comprehended it or not. However, Bai Qi was certain that he had comprehended it. With his killing intent, he was able to turn his own energy into a real weapon. When he unleashed his energy, it was not a direct release. Instead, it would condense into a real attack. While killing the opponent, the energy could also be retrieved. What Bai Qi possessed was his massive killing intent. What did Chun Xiaolian possess? At that moment, when the stinging pain in his arm and the killing intent within his body caused a huge impact, Qi Yu suddenly thought of the Xianyuan sword. Xuanyuan's soul had once told him that the Xianyuan sword was the sword of the benevolent. The benevolent were invincible. Understanding instantly surged into his mind. The application of energy was like water flowing when the conditions were right, and everything appeared within Qi Yu's mind. When he swung his right fist once again and unleashed the source of Kiran's power, everything had changed. Even the god-slaying sword, which had been condensed with surging killing intent, could no longer cause any harm to him. He had comprehended real power. This was the real Kiran's arm. The 100,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals disappeared. With every step Qi Yu took, the energy within his body would increase by a fraction and replenish the energy he had expended earlier. In the distance, the colorful fog that he had seen earlier gradually became clearer. It seemed as though it was enveloping some building within it. He soared into the sky, and the 6 wings on his back that had appeared due to the transformation of the crimson gold armor spread out at the same time. Everything around him flashed past like a flash of light. In the blink of an eye, Qi Yu had already arrived before the colorful fog. It was a layer of special energy. The energy was very gentle and did not have any offensive or blocking effects. However, when Qi Yu stepped into the colorful fog, he could clearly feel that everything around him seemed to have been sealed off. His spiritual power had been completely squeezed back into his body. For an unparalleled powerhouse like him, not having spiritual power to explore his surroundings was as painful as losing one's eyes and ears. However, Qi Yu had no intention of retreating. Through the previous battle, although the Kunlun mirrors had intentionally tricked him, he understood that everything the immortal in the mirror had said would not be wrong. The 100,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals were his only test. Soon, he would be able to see the bell of the East Emperor. As expected, the effect of the colorful fog was only to completely compress his spiritual power and isolate it from the outside world. It did not have any other effects. He flapped the 6 wings on his back and flew forward. The wind thundercloud force spread out from his body and formed a whirlwind around him, blowing away some of the colorful fog. Even though the colorful fog was very viscous, it could not stay around Chi-Yu's body. When Chi-Yu had advanced for about a kilometer, the colorful fog around him disappeared quietly. The scene that appeared in front of him caused his pupils to contract involuntarily. It was a palace. Yes, it was a palace. The huge palace was completely golden in color. The colorful light was released by a colorful gem that was embedded in the palace's main door. The main door of the palace was open, and there was no one guarding it. The palace wall in front of him extended to both sides, and he could not see the end of it. The farthest part had already disappeared into the colorful fog. This meant that the palace wall in front of him was at least a kilometer wide. When Chi-Yu landed in front of the main door of the palace, he felt as though his feet were on solid ground. He raised his hand and pressed on the palace wall beside him. His spiritual power was mixed with the aura of his soul, and he directly inserted it. When he deeply felt what he wanted to explore, even though Chi-Yu had just had an epiphany, he could not help but have a change of expression. This was because he was shocked to find that the palace was completely formed by the condensation of energy. Moreover, it was completely materialized energy. Hence, he could not feel any energy at all. A palace of such a scale was completely formed by the condensation of energy. How much energy would that require? Since this was the territory of the Bell of the East Emperor, this palace was obviously formed by the Bell of the East Emperor. After walking through the main door, an even more bizarre scene appeared in front of Chi-Yu. There were palace walls on both sides, and the road under his feet was not ordinary ground, but clouds. Using clouds as a road, it was called the Cloud Path. This was definitely not a palace that would appear on Earth. Chi-Yu could not be more familiar with that aura. It was the aura of a god. After walking through the main door, the formless pressure made him feel like he was worshipping it. The huge energy waves were constantly increasing. Chi-Yu remembered that the Kunlun mirrors had said that if he kept walking forward, he would be able to see the bell of the East Emperor. He did not hesitate and walked forward. The cloud path was very soft and full of elasticity. Those clouds seemed to be material. If it was not for the fact that they were constantly surging, Chi-Yu would have thought that there was a transparent road under his feet and that the clouds were just something outside of the road. However, everything was not as simple as it seemed. This was really a cloud path. He kept walking forward, and the surrounding scenery kept changing. There was a magnificent palace with a towering peak that was completely covered in golden light. He could not see the peak, but it definitely existed. As he walked, Chi-Yu discovered many forks. He did not know where these forks led to, so he did not search for them. The strangeness of this place had already made him raise his vigilance to the highest level. Finally, after Chi-Yu had walked for an unknown period of time, the path in front of him was finally blocked. It was blocked by a person. It was a giant that was more than 7 meters tall. His entire body was covered with a layer of dark green armor. His head was like a bucket, and his sturdy body was like a tank standing there. The muscles on his body looked like huge bulging balls. That formless domineering aura made Chi-Yu feel an extremely strong pressure. At the same time, he also realized that this person's body seemed to be suppressed. At this moment, he was not in his true appearance. Chi-Yu did not know where this feeling came from. He only felt that this person was probably more than 100 meters tall. His weapons were a pair of hammers. The hammers were about 2 meters long, and the hammers' heads were about 2 meters in diameter. The huge hammers were shining with a dark golden light. Although the energy was restrained, Chi-Yu did not doubt its tyrannical destructive power. Although this person's aura was very strong, he was not the main thing that attracted Chi-Yu's attention. Chi-Yu saw a 7-colored light cloud above the person's head. The light cloud was constantly moving, producing layers of halos. The halos flickered and condensed inside. It seemed to be a door, similar to the door that he had passed through when he entered Xuanyuan's tomb. It had the magical effect of traveling through space. The person's eyes were closed, and he did not look at Qiyu. However, if Qiyu wanted to enter the light cloud, he had to move away from his original position. Otherwise, his huge body would have completely blocked the light cloud. It's here. The mirror immortal's voice sounded. Go up from here, and you will see the Eastern Emperor Bell. Qiyu, be careful. This time, Qiyu actually heard some concern in her voice. Moreover, the mirror immortal's aura seemed to be somewhat unstable. It was an indescribable feeling. A faint light flickered, and Qiyu's eyes shone brightly. Friend, can you please move aside? The huge body did not move. It was still standing there quietly. It seemed as if it did not hear anything. Please move aside. Thank you. I do not wish to repeat the third transformation. This time, there was finally a reaction. The giant's reaction was to raise the hammers in his hands, and a huge amount of energy condensed in his hammers. A layer of dark green light enveloped his entire body. Qiyu's eyes lit up. You're also a god. Your understanding is the persistence of power, right? The giant still did not open his eyes. However, the dark green light became more and more intense. However, Qiyu, who had understood it, was not afraid of the pressure of the energy. He did not seem to be afraid of Bai Qi's energy pressure at all. A faint smile appeared on his face. Since that's the case, I'll try to understand the difference between your strength and Bai Qi's killing intent. Step by step, Qiyu moved forward. His footsteps were very steady, neither solemn nor relaxed. It was as though he was walking normally. Mighty miracle god, let him come up. A majestic voice suddenly came from all directions. Qiyu felt his body tensing up. For some unknown reason, his right foot, which he had just raised up, could no longer step down. The dark green light gradually disappeared, and the giant took a step back. The hammers were kept by his sides. At that moment, he still did not open his eyes. At the same time, the pressure on Qiyu's body disappeared. Qiyu nodded his head. Then, he took a step forward and floated up. A surging aura tugged at his body. It was not a feeling of ascension. However, everything around him had completely disappeared. This time, it was a huge palace, but this time, there were no palace walls. Surrounding the palace were 81 huge white jade pillars. The pillars were engraved with various patterns, and there were no flaws in their exquisiteness. Even the best works of art on earth could not be compared to them. Unfortunately, the current Qiyu was not in the mood to appreciate these. When he first arrived in this world, his spirit was immediately attracted by the thing in front of him. At the front of the palace was a high platform. There were a total of 18 steps leading to the top. That was a throne. It was the throne that Qiyu had seen on TV before. On the throne, there was a person sitting. Or, in this entire palace, there was only one person. The white robe was inlaid with golden patterns. It was an elegant decoration. There was a white jade crown on his head. Above the white jade crown, there were dozens of strings of pearls floating forward, forming a beautiful curtain of pearls. Where the pearls were connected to the white jade crown, there was actually a layer of golden light. There was no substance to it. It was just the light of energy. This person looked to be about 30 years old. His face was like a crown of jade. He could not be considered handsome, but he had a dignified appearance. Just by looking at his face, one could feel the word majestic. Although he was sitting, Qiyu could still feel that he was at least 5 meters tall. That majestic aura was the pressure that he had felt just now. Tell me, why are you here? The middle-aged man said calmly. Qiyu did not move forward. He stood where he was and said, I want to go to the divine realm, so I am here. Senior Dong Wang. The middle-aged man looked at Qiyu in surprise and said, You know that I am Dong Wang? Qiyu smiled indifferently and said, Since this is the territory of the Bell of the Eastern Emperor, and you are the master of this place, then if you are not the soul of the Bell of the Eastern Emperor, who are you? Dong Wang nodded and said, That's right, I am. Dong Wang, since you can defeat Bai Qi, you're already qualified to meet me. However, do you really want to go to the divine realm? Qiyu nodded without hesitation and said, That's right, I want to go to the divine realm. I have to go. Dong Wang asked why. Qi Yu said, for the survival of the humans in this world. Earth is already shrouded in darkness. You should know this, right? If I want to save this disaster, I have to go to the divine realm to find the power that belongs to me. Dong Wang laughed and said, you are not a pure human. Why do you want to help the humans? However, you are the strongest Kirin I have ever seen. I did not expect the combination of Kirin and a human to have such an effect. Can you tell me then? What does it have to do with me if you want to save the humans? Qi was stunned for a moment. He really did not know how to answer Dong Wang's question. Perhaps it has nothing to do with me. However, if this world is really shrouded in darkness, then how many lives will be destroyed? Back then, when the gods of water and fire created our world, they put in so much effort. Could it be that they want to see this happen? Shut up. Don't mention those two old things in front of me. Dong Wang, who was gentle and refined just a moment ago, was suddenly enraged. An enormous aura surged towards Qi Yu with an unstoppable momentum. A strange light flashed in Qi Yu's eyes. Instead of retreating, he took a step forward with his left foot. At the same time, he slowly raised his right hand in a perfect trajectory. His right palm was like a knife. The sound of ripping cloth suddenly appeared, and a layer of reddish-gold light slashed upwards from the bottom. An enormous amount of energy burst forth from it. It rushed past both sides of Qi Yu, but he moved about a meter forward, unaffected by Dong Wang's energy. The Sword of Benevolence. This is the aura of the Xianyuan sword. No wonder you dare to come here to find me. So, you have already obtained the Xianyuan sword. You actually comprehended its true essence and made it your own. Good. The Sword of Benevolence is indeed much stronger than the God-slaying sword. I don't know how many years you have lived here. Since you want to challenge my authority, I will grant you your wish. If you can defeat me, I will send you to the immortal realm. Dong Wang's expression became very cold, and the muscles on his face were even slightly contorted. A violent red light flashed in his eyes, as if he was on the verge of exploding. Senior Dong Wang, is this the final test? Qi Yu asked. Dong Wang said in a low voice, if you can defeat me, then this will be the final test. Qi Yu smiled slightly and said, very well. Come at me then. After the epiphany, he no longer had anything to fear. Even though Dong Wang seemed to have become one with everything around him, and his energy had reached an unimaginable level, Qi Yu still would not retreat. He slowly raised his right arm, and the silver-black light shone again. His right arm was not covered by the reddish-gold armor, and it did not emit a strong energy wave. However, when Dong Wang saw his right arm, his pupils contracted strangely. Wait a minute, this is not fair. Dong Wang, how can you treat a junior like this? A five-colored light gushed out of Qi Yu's chest, and a white-clothed Yinling floated to Qi Yu's side. As soon as he appeared, the invisible pressure released by Dong Wang disappeared. Dong Wang's expression changed slightly. It's you? You actually dare to go against me? Aren't you afraid that I will destroy you here? Don't forget that the rules set by those two old fellows have nothing to do with me. No wonder this human dares to come here to find me. He has both you and Xuanyuan's soul to back him up. It's a pity that Xuanyuan's sword has been broken, so Xuanyuan's soul can't possibly come here. Otherwise, if the two of you join forces, perhaps I will treat you seriously. Yinling sneered and said, Dong Wang is still Dong Wang. If it wasn't for your arrogance, would we have ended up like this? That's right, Xuanyuan's sword has been broken, and Xuanyuan's soul has fallen into a deep sleep. As the leader of the 10 great divine weapons, I'm not surprised that you know about this. However, have you ever thought about how we came to your domain? Do you really think that I'm the only one who can help Qi Yu? As he spoke, the Kantong seal left Qi Yu's chest and landed in Yinling's hand. A five-colored halo floated out and enveloped him and Qi Yu. Qi Yu, remember, no matter what happens later, don't attack recklessly. Dong Wang's strength is extremely terrifying. Not to mention you, even the Bull Demon King can't be his match without Panga's axe and Clear Sky Pagoda. His defense is the strongest in the world, so strong that even the fire and water gods can't destroy it. Any attack is meaningless to him. You don't have to worry about anything and leave everything to me. Yinling's voice clearly entered Qi Yu's ears, causing Qi Yu, who was gathering energy, to slowly stop his right arm. Chapter 345. Yinling laughed. Dong Wang, you're not old yet. Why are you so muddled? Think about it. Among the 10 great artifacts, do I have the ability to enter your domain? If I could, my ranking wouldn't be so low. Hearing Yinling's words, Dong Wang's expression suddenly changed. It's her? Is it her? So what if it's me? A cold voice suddenly sounded. An aquamarine light appeared on the other side of Qi Yu. It was the mirror fairy. She looked at Yinling coldly. Yinling was also looking at her with a smile, as if nothing had happened. Qi Yu looked at Yinling in surprise. He didn't understand why Yinling had dragged the mirror fairy into this. After all, the mirror fairy was responsible for protecting the snow girl. At this time, the others were all on the Kongtong seal. If Dong Wang was really so powerful, he and the 2 great artifacts wouldn't be the only ones who would be destroyed here. However, Qi Yu's surprise soon changed. As soon as the immortal in the mirror appeared, Dong Wang's expression changed. It became very strange. He was extremely excited, and his body trembled slightly. He no longer had the dignified and superior look he had before. He almost staggered down from the seal. It took him only a few steps to cover the distance of 1,000 meters. In a flash of golden light, he had already arrived in front of the 3 people. Don't come over, the mirror fairy shouted. What Qi Yu did not expect was that Dong Wang, who had wanted to kill them in the face of the Yin spirit, would actually stutter to a halt. His face was filled with embarrassment as he looked at the fairy in the mirror with anticipation and hesitation. The excitement in his eyes contained joy and many complicated emotions. His body was still trembling uncontrollably. Xian, you're here too. Yes. I'm so stupid. I should have thought that besides you, no one else could enter my domain. Great, you're finally here. Do you know that I've been thinking about you for too long? Dong Wang was so excited that he was a little incoherent. He looked at the mirror fairy as if he wanted to pounce on her, but he was afraid that she would be angry. Seeing this scene, the vigilance in Qi Yu's heart gradually disappeared, and he thought it was funny. Could it be that this was the love between divine artifacts? Isn't this a little too ridiculous? Yinling was obviously aware of the relationship between them. It was no wonder that he had decided to come with her in the end, and even appeared in front of Dong Wang fearlessly. All of this was too funny. It was too interesting. He subconsciously took 2 steps back and gave the 3 divine artifacts space. He crossed his arms in front of his chest. Qi Yu knew that the divine artifact was the divine artifact. He could only watch a good show from now on. The immortal's land in the mirror's gaze was even colder than when it had looked at Qi Yu. You miss me? You miss me? If that was the case, would we have become like this? After all these years, if you wanted me, why didn't you come to me? Don't tell me you don't know where I am. Dong Wang rubbed his hands anxiously in front of his chest. He turned his head and looked at Yinling for help. Brother Yin, help me say something. Who am I? Don't you know? Yinling chuckled and said, just now, someone seemed to want to destroy me and Qi Yu. Who are you? You're an incomparably arrogant person. You're even willing to let someone else be your scapegoat. I can't be bothered with the matters between the 2 of you. You can talk among yourselves. You. Dong Wang was furious. Golden light flashed, and in an instant, his right hand grabbed Yinling's neck. The 5-colored light on Yinling's body disappeared, and his aura was completely enveloped by Dong Wang in an instant. Even his connection with Qi Yu was cut off in an instant. Qi Yu's body tensed up. He finally understood why Yinling said that Dong Wang was terrifying. Their powers were not on the same level at all. There was no powerful aura, but the moment Dong Wang made his move at lightning speed, everything around him seemed to move according to his will. All of Yinling's energy was completely sealed and compressed in his body, and he could not even fight back. In fact, Yinling was not completely powerless. Although he was far weaker than Dong Wang, he was still one of the 10 great artifacts after all. He was suppressed by Dong Wang in an instant because he did not want to fight back at all. At this moment, he was speechless, but he looked at Dong Wang mockingly. How majestic! You're still the same as before. You haven't changed at all. The cold voice was heard again. Upon hearing the immortal in the mirror's words, Dongwang immediately let go of Yinling like a deflated balloon. He quickly turned around and smiled apologetically. No, Xian, please don't misunderstand. Brother Yin and I were just fooling around. Tell me, Xian, how can you forgive me for my past mistakes? As long as it's your wish, I'll do my best, even if I have to reverse the flow of the heavenly river. The immortal in the mirror said calmly, There's no need for that. I'll never forgive you. Have you already forgotten what you've done in the past? On the surface, you're incomparably arrogant, and you seem to have the greatest power. However, you're actually a cowardly villain. Do you really love me? If that's the case, have you ever said a word for me? Back then, when that woman wanted to destroy me, you didn't even dare to make a sound. If it weren't for the fire and water gods who preserve my soul and divine sense, I would have been doomed eternally, and my soul would have dissipated. Perhaps you all hate them, but I'm very grateful to them. They avenged me by destroying all the gods in the realm of the gods. Therefore, I'm completely willing to become the immortal in the Kunlun mirrors. Upon hearing the immortal in the mirror's words, Qi Yu's expression changed drastically. With his intelligence, he immediately realized that the 10 great artifacts were not as simple as he thought they were. It seemed the souls of the 10 great artifacts had actually belonged to the gods in the eastern realm of the gods. No wonder the fire and water gods would make the 10 great artifacts the guardians of the East. It turned out that their souls were the real gods. Although Qi Yu couldn't figure out the real secret of the 10 great artifacts, from the words of the immortal in the mirror, he could already understand some of their secrets. Dongwang looked at the immortal in the mirror. His face was bitter, but he couldn't say anything to refute. Xian, can't you forgive me? As long as you're willing to forgive me, I'll do anything you want me to do. You know, I had no choice. I beg you, just give me one more chance. How many years has it been? We haven't seen each other for so many years. Xian, I love you with all my heart. The immortal in the mirror looked at Dongwang calmly, but didn't say a word. At this time, Yinling had already retreated to Qi Yu's side. She transmitted her voice to Qi Yu. My guess is absolutely correct. The immortal in the mirror is indeed the person from back then. This time, no matter how powerful Dongwang is, he won't be a threat to us. Let's wait for a good show. Qi Yu and Yinling exchanged glances and couldn't help but reveal a knowing smile. Dongwang seemed to feel the stares of Qi Yu and Yinling. He glared at each other and said, Get out of my way. I'm talking to Xian. You don't have the right to listen to me. A huge pressure appeared again, which fully showed Dongwang's extremely unstable state of mind. Qi Yu looked at him coldly and said, You talk, we'll talk. Dongwang, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? A cold light flashed in Dongwang's eyes, and his killing intent surged. After the appearance of the immortal in the mirror, his state of mind was extremely unstable. Now that he was contradicted by Qi Yu, he couldn't bear it anymore. He flashed and appeared in front of Qi Yu. Different from how he treated Yinling just now, he didn't grab him. Instead, he directly punched at Qi Yu. A buzzing sound came from Dongwang's fist. When Qi Yu was about to resist, he suddenly felt that his mind power was greatly shaken, and even his soul was almost shattered by the sound of the bell. The huge energy swept around his body in an instant, and the space was completely compressed. Not to mention dodging. Even lifting his arm became an extremely difficult thing. What was more terrifying was that the shock of the bell had greatly slowed down his body's reaction speed. In a moment, Dongwang's fist was already in front of him. Dongwang's eyes were full of killing intent. In his eyes, Qi Yu had completely become a dead man. He absolutely didn't believe that a human could dodge his attack under such circumstances. Moreover, it was an all-out attack. All of a sudden, when Dongwang's fist was less than a foot away from Qi Yu's body, and his body was completely enveloped by the golden light on Dongwang's fist, Qi Yu's eyes suddenly lit up like stars. There was no powerful energy, but a gentle aura was released from his body, forming a layer of snow-white air cushion in front of Dongwang. Dongwang clearly felt that the spiritual restriction he had on Qi Yu had collapsed in an instant. Then, Qi Yu's body had already floated back 10 meters, causing his fist to hit nothing but air. In the next moment, Chi returned to his previous position and bombarded Dong Huang's fist with the same punch. At this moment, Dong Huang's old force had just dissipated, and he hadn't recovered yet. The timing was so good that even the Mirror Fairy and Yin Ling could not help but gasp in amazement. They originally wanted to help Chi Yu, but they stopped. Dong Huang looked at Chi Yu's action and showed a trace of surprise. Then, Chi Yu saw a trace of disdain in his eyes. At this moment, the two fists finally collided. Buzz, a much more intense buzz than before, rang out in an instant. Dong Huang took 3 steps back before he could stand firm. His expression had changed greatly, while Chi Yu's body was thrown back. He flipped 3 times in the air before he landed firmly on the ground. At this moment, his body had been completely wrapped in a layer of milky white light. This layer of defensive light fluctuated violently like water ripples, as if it was dissolving some invisible force. The rise and fall of Chi Yu's chest had clearly become much more intense, and the light in his eyes had also become stronger. At the very least, on the surface, he did not seem to have suffered much in this exchange with Dong Huang. Dong Huang quickly recovered from his shock and nodded. Good. No wonder you dared come here. You do have some skills. I'm afraid that no one in the human world can surpass your level. Unfortunately, the gap between you and me is intrinsic, so you still have to die. Chi Yu looked at Dong Huang as his brain worked quickly. The contact between their fists just now was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. Dong Huang's condensed energy had dissipated most of it because he could suddenly cut off Dong Huang's control over his mental strength. Even so, when he counterattacked, he did not gain any advantage at all. Instead, the energy and chi in his body were almost scattered by the counterattack's sound wave energy. If it was not for the fact that he had just comprehended the mystery of the Heart of Benevolence, which enabled him to release all the power of his energy through the red gold armor, he was afraid that he would not have been able to withstand this punch. Dong Huang was not exaggerating. He was right. At least, he was not on the same level as him now. All right, go ahead and kill him. Just kill him. If you kill him, Yin Ling and I will also be finished. That way, you'll also be satisfied. Do it, the immortal in the mirror said indifferently, still standing in the same place. Dong Huang suddenly turned around and looked at the immortal in the mirror. He said in shock, Immortal, you mean? The immortal in the mirror said calmly, Yes, he is my master now. What do you think? Do you still want to kill him? Dong Huang hesitated. But as one of the 10 great artifacts, even if your master dies, you will at most return to your original seal. How can you be destroyed? The immortal in the mirror said calmly, As long as my soul completely fuses with him, this will naturally happen. Can't I ask for death? Dong Huang looked at Chi Yu again. This time, although the murderous intent in his eyes had disappeared, his voice was even colder. Tell me, what did you do to Immortal? Did you? Chi Yu did not answer. He put his hands behind his back and quickly absorbed the energy in the air. Only God knew what this crazy Dong Huang Bell was going to do. If it attacked again, he had to maintain his best state. The immortal in the mirror flashed and appeared next to Chi Yu. You are still so shameless, but don't think that others are as shameless as you. Go to hell. As he spoke, the immortal in the mirror pushed his hands forward. 2 rays of green light condensed into the shape of an arrow and stabbed at Dong Huang's chest. Chi Yu was next to the immortal in the mirror, so he could clearly see that the immortal in the mirror's eyes were filled with tears. Dong Huang looked at the beautiful big eyes of the immortal in the mirror. His eyes were filled with bitterness. He did not resist at all and let the 2 rays of energy from the immortal in the mirror pierce his chest. There was no violent buzzing sound like when Chi Yu had attacked previously. His body stiffened and his face turned pale. He subconsciously took a few steps back, but his expression seemed to have relaxed a lot. 2 clouds of blood spurted out from Dong Huang's back. The penetrating wound was clearly visible, and it was slowly expanding in front of his chest. Dong Huang felt a sense of relief. It was as if the 2 wounds that were fatal to ordinary people did not appear on his body. At this moment, he was still looking at the immortal in the mirror with infatuation, but he did not say a word. His gaze seemed to melt the immortal in the mirror. You why? You have the bell body. How could I hurt you? Seeing Dong Huang's appearance, the immortal in the mirror's voice was no longer as cold as before. It was even trembling slightly. Dong Huang smiled and said, "Since you can choose to fuse your soul with another man and even die with him, why can't I give up my defense? Xian, I know that it was my fault back then. I don't want to explain anything to you anymore. Perhaps, only with my death, can you understand my feelings for you. Xian, to be able to die in your hands is already the most perfect and fortunate thing for me." As he spoke, Dong Huang slowly sat down on the ground. He sat cross-legged and allowed the golden red blood to flow out from the huge wound. No, no. The immortal in the mirror screamed in pain. In a flash, she had already arrived beside Dong Huang. The dark green light was blazing and instantly wrapped around Dong Huang's body. It completely blocked the bleeding wound and prevented him from bleeding too much. Dong Huang looked at the immortal in the mirror blankly. "Xian, can you let me die in your arms? If you can. Even if I die, I will smile and go to the ground. Moreover, for us, life and death are already very, very indifferent to us. I have been alone here for so many years. Actually, I did not want to wait for your forgiveness. I just hope that I can see you again. Xian, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to die in your hands." At this moment, the immortal in the mirror was already in tears. No, Dong Huang. You can't die. I won't let you die." As she spoke, she had already opened her arms and firmly embraced Dong Huang. Chi Yu and Yin Ling did not expect things to develop to such an extent. Both of them could not help but be a little sluggish. If Dong Huang died, what kind of situation would happen? They were all in the Dong Huang domain. Chi Yu did not know, and neither did Yin Ling Dong Huang's side. "Xian, your arms are still so warm and comfortable. How long has it been? I don't even know how long it has been since I last enjoyed this feeling. I can't even remember. However, your aura is still so familiar." The immortal in the mirror shouted angrily, "Don't say any more. What's the use of saying all this now? Don't die. I order you not to die. Otherwise, I will never forgive you." Dong Huang smiled bitterly and said, "My life and death are no longer in my control. Without any defense, although your attack is the weakest among the 10 great artifacts, it is still enough to destroy the functions in my body and damage my divine sense. My energy will continue to flow away. However, don't worry. I won't die in a short period of time. After all, I am Dong Huang. The energy I have is enough for me to flow away for a period of time. It could be a day or even 3 days. Xian, can you promise me that you will stay by my side during this period of time? Just like when we were together in the past." "No, I won't promise you. Unless you come back to life, I won't promise you." "Dong Huang, don't die." The immortal in the mirror was choking with sobs. Seeing that they were going to part forever, Chi Yu suddenly laughed and woke up from his daze. His laughter was a little loud. At least, Dong Huang heard it. "Bastard, what are you laughing at? Don't think that I can't destroy you like this. This is my domain. If I want you to die, you'll be done for at any moment." Dong Huang was enraged, his eyes almost spitting fire as he glared at Chi Yu. If it weren't for the words of the immortal in the mirror, he would have attacked Chi Yu again. Chi Yu smiled and said, "I laughed because I laughed at your stupidity. Can't you hear that the immortal in the mirror actually has the heart to forgive you? She just said that if you die, she will never forgive you. On the contrary, if you can survive, she is very likely to forgive you. You can't even hear this and keep saying that it doesn't matter whether she forgives you or not. I really don't know what is in your head. Is it paste? If she doesn't have you in her heart, why do you think she is crying? If she really hates you, I'm afraid she can't wait for you to die. You have waited for so many years. Do you think the immortal in the mirror has it easy? Hasn't she been waiting and suffering all the time?" Although he didn't know the process of the matter, he had already understood a lot of the general situation through his own judgment. The so-called onlookers see more clearly was the truth. Dong Huang was stunned. "You call her senior, so between you two." Chi had already seen that Dong Huang's jealousy was extremely strong. He said angrily, "That's your dirty thinking, not what happened between us. Dong Wang subconsciously turned to the immortal in the mirror and said, "Immortal, is what he said true? Are you really willing to forgive me?" The immortal in the mirror said with tears in her eyes, "No, I won't forgive you. As long as you die, I will never forgive you." Dong Wang said sadly, "Yes, it's a pity that I am going to die. However, I am very happy that at least you still have me in your heart." With a flash of light, she had already come to the side of the immortal in the mirror and said lightly, "Who said you were going to die? As long as I am here, as long as you are still breathing, you will not die. What's so great about being a god? Aren't you still alive?" Dong Wang said angrily, "Who do you think you are? My spiritual awareness has been broken, unless it's the two great gods of water and fire. Ayu, what is this power?" The anger suddenly disappeared and turned into extreme surprise. The soft the light green light full of vitality, had been released from Chi-Yu's body, covering his body. Inside, the immortal in the mirror also became dull. When he looked up at Chi-Yu, his eyes were full of gratitude. The source of nature. It was one of the most revitalizing energies in the world. After many qualitative changes, it had reached an unprecedented level. It had already reached an unprecedented level. As long as Chi-Yu's life imprint remained, the effect of the spring of nature would be unparalleled. He quickly proved this point to Dong Wang. The soft energy of the source of nature first sealed the wounds on Dong Wang's chest and back, and the soft energy continued to invade Dong Wang's body. Although Chi-Yu did not know what Dong Wang's meridians were like, he quickly found the so-called spiritual awareness that Dong Wang called. It was a special energy, like a sphere, full of soul aura. At this time, there was a gap. A huge amount of energy was constantly flowing out of it. Chi-Yu's source of nature energy floated up and directly blocked the gap. The energy full of vitality fully stimulated the aura of the gap, so that Dong Wang's spiritual awareness quickly recovered. Dong Wang no longer spoke. Under the stimulation of Chi-Yu's energy, he closed his eyes. He adjusted his own spiritual awareness to cooperate with Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu found that Dong Wang's spiritual awareness was an extremely huge amount of energy. It was even more powerful than all of his energy combined. At first glance, it was only a ball the size of a fist, but when he really integrated the energy of the source of nature into it, he found that the small gap was like a bottomless abyss, devouring a lot of his energy. The energy of the source of nature was constantly pouring out, and Chi-Yu also found a wonderful thing at this time. When his spiritual power came into contact with Dong Wang's spiritual awareness, it would naturally go through a process of rendering and compression. The originally invisible spiritual power, under the stimulation of Dong Wang's spiritual awareness, gradually turned pale gold and more perfectly integrated with the soul. One gain and one loss. The source of nature continued to output, but the spiritual power continued to grow. Because of the energy characteristic of Chi-Yu, he could quickly absorb the energy molecules in the air to fill his body. Otherwise, if it were someone else, they would be sucked dry by Dong Wang in a short time. And it might not be effective. The source of nature was indeed magical. It did not take too long for the gap in Dong Wang's spiritual awareness to gradually close, and the spiritual awareness aura that flowed out from it was completely absorbed by Chi-Yu's spiritual awareness that was full of soul aura. Finally, when the turquoise light and the golden sphere became whole again, Chi-Yu only felt that a huge amount of energy suddenly came, completely pushing his energy out of Dong Wang's body. At the same time, more energy had wrapped his body and swarmed into his body. The energy that had just been consumed had been restored to normal in an instant. Needless to say, this was Dong Wang's reward. After the recovery of the spiritual awareness, the wounds on Dong Wang's chest and back healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. After a while, they had completely healed, not even leaving a trace. Even the clothes on his body automatically reassembled, returning to their original appearance. Except for a pale face, he was no different from when Chi-Yu first came here. His life aura no longer flowed, and everything returned to normal. Chi-Yu and Dong Wang opened their eyes almost at the same time. Chi-Yu's eyes were very pure, but Dong Wang's eyes became a little complicated. Why did you help me? Dong Wang asked subconsciously. Chi Yu smiled indifferently and said, because I still have something to ask you to help me. How can you die? Frankly speaking, I don't like you. I think it's the same for you, right? If I don't help you, then what's the point of the benevolent heart that I have comprehended? I have done what I should do. If you have the ability, you can convince the Mirror Immortal Senior. Dong Wang nodded. No matter what, I will remember this favor. Dong Wang, never like to owe people anything. I will return it to you very soon. As he said, his eyes had turned to the Mirror Immortal on the side. The Mirror Immortal's face looked a little paler than Dong Wang's. The process of going from great sorrow to great joy was really difficult to bear. Even for her at this moment, her feelings were extremely complicated. Looking at Dong Wang, she did not even know how to face him. Xian, what she said just now, is it true? Are you really willing to forgive me? Although I am alive now, if you are willing, my life will always be yours. You can take it away whenever you want. As he said that, Dong Wang reached out and held the Mirror Immortal's white hand in his, looking like he was intoxicated. The Mirror Immortal's pale face became a little more flushed, and she lowered her head to avoid looking at Dong Wang. I haven't forgiven you. I don't care about your matters. Do whatever you want. An azure light flashed, and before Dong Wang could react, she had already turned into a wisp of energy and floated into Chi Yu's body. At this moment, although Yin Ling came out of the Kong Tong seal, the body of the Kong Tong seal was still in Chi Yu's body. The Snow Girl was in the Kong Tong seal, so the Mirror Immortal naturally had to return there. Looking at the place where the Mirror Immortal disappeared, Dong Wang could not help but shake his head helplessly. Xian, have you forgiven me or not? We have just met. How can you bear to leave me again? What do you want me to do? Yin Ling walked to Chi Yu's side and said, Dong Wang, it seems that your original ambition has really been erased. Concern leads to chaos. That's right. If she hasn't forgiven you, then I'd rather you kill me. Dong Wang was pleasantly surprised. Brother Yin, is what you said true? Yin Ling looked at him angrily and said, It's fake. Dong Wang smiled apologetically. It was my fault just now. Please forgive me, Brother Yin. For so many years, I have been looking forward to meeting Xian one day. Back then, when Bai Qi came here, I wanted to attach myself to him and leave the place where I was sealed. Unfortunately, Bai Qi's killing intent was too strong. If I were to help him, the damage he could cause would be no less than what the immortal realm had done to the human world. So, I had no choice but to imprison him here. This time, when Shiyu came, I originally wanted to test him and see if I could attach myself to him and leave this place. However, when you guys appeared, I realized that there were already 5 great artifacts in the outside world. Even if I wanted to leave now, it would be impossible. Fortunately, Xian is on Chi Yu's body. We finally meet again. Chapter 346. Dong Wang chuckled. As the saying goes, there are policies from above and countermeasures from below. The fire and water gods have their ways, and I have my own ideas too. Like I said just now, I'm relying on them, not recognizing them as my master. Could it be that Brother Yin still doesn't understand the profundity of this? Chi Yu, you said you need my help. What is it? Chi Yu replied, We're here to ask for Senior's help to open the passage to the Divine Realm. Dong Wang was shocked. What? You want to go to the Divine Realm? Chi Yu nodded. I must go to the God World. Dong Wang frowned. I'm afraid it'll be difficult. Even if I agree, it'll be hard for you to come back. You're a human. What's the point of going there? Besides, after the fire and water gods destroyed the gods, they sealed the Divine Realm. Even though I can open the seal, I don't know what dangers lie within. You saved me just now, so I can help you. But I don't approve of you going. If you're destroyed in the Divine Realm, won't my Xian? Chi Yu smiled. No, that's not a problem. As long as Senior is willing to help me open the passage to the Divine Realm, I can even let you reunite with the Immortal in the mirror for a while. The Immortal in the mirror was lying to you just now. She didn't recognize me as her master. Chi Yu waved his hands, and an icy blue light floated out of the Kong Tong seal. It was the sleeping Snow Girl. At this moment, She seemed to be sleeping peacefully. How powerful was Dongwang? He could tell at a glance that the mirror immortal was attached to the Snow Lady's body, and his previous ill feelings disappeared. He looked at the Snow Lady and sensed the mirror immortal's aura, and a grateful expression appeared on his face. Thank you. If not for you, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to get Xian's forgiveness. All right, since you want to go to the divine realm, I'll help you. But if you die there, I won't be able to save you. Have you thought it through? Qiyu nodded his head resolutely. He knew that if he did not go to the god world, he would not be able to survive. Then, when the Bull Demon King came, he would have no chance at all. Therefore, he could only rely on his own strength. Dongwang nodded and said, All right, come with me. Brother Yin, are you going with him? Just as Yin Ling was about to nod, Qiyu interrupted. No, Brother Yin Ling won't go. I'll go alone. Yin Ling was stunned and said, Qiyu, what do you mean by that? I recognize you as my master, so how can I not go with you? He had the undying domain. You'll have a better chance. Qiyu shook his head and said, No, you can't go with me. If I die alone, I will get Senior Dongwang to send you back. Or, let everyone stay here and continue training until someone could deal with the Bull Demon King. If you all come with me. If that happened, the human race would be plunged into eternal darkness. Furthermore, how could I let my companions die with me? I've decided, Brother Yinling, you don't have to go with me. As he spoke, Qiyu suddenly hit his chest with his palm, and a layer of milky white light suddenly burst out from his chest. Then, Yinling's body was instantly sucked back by the Kongtong seal. The Kongtong seal, shrouded in five-colored light, floated down from Qiyu's chest. His face turned red, and with a cry, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Dongwang's eyes revealed a trace of shock. Qiyu, what you're doing will cause great harm to your body. If you can't come back in a short time, I'm afraid. Qiyu smiled indifferently and said, It's nothing. Everything has to be considered in the worst-case scenario. Senior Dongwang, I've temporarily used my own strength to seal the Kongtong seal, and I'll leave it to you. If you feel that I can't come back, release Senior Yinling and discuss with Senior Immortal in the mirror on how to deal with the crisis facing the human race. If it's possible, I hope that Senior Dongwang can also help. After all, the Earth is the foundation of this world. If the human race is really destroyed, the Earth will be shrouded in eternal darkness. I think that's not what you want to see. Dongwang's expression changed. He sighed and said, It's the first time I've seen a human with such courage like you. No wonder you can understand the true meaning of the Xianyuan sword. They didn't choose the wrong person. All right, I promise you. If you can't come back, I'll break the seal here and go to Earth, even if I have to violate the original oath. Qiyu, you can seal the Kongtong seal. You're much stronger than I thought. Tell me honestly, if you fight me with all your strength, what do you think your chances are? Qiyu thought about it and said about 30%. Dongwang looked at Qiyu's calm expression and knew that Qiyu wasn't lying. Although he didn't know why Qiyu would have such a big chance for what Qiyu had just done, he could tell that what he said was true. Qiyu looked at Dongwang's puzzled expression and naturally knew what he was thinking. He smiled and said, It's actually very simple. Indeed, my current strength isn't on the same level as yours. However, I'm not just a human. The moment I understood the heart of benevolence, I already possessed at least 70% of the power of the Xianyuan sword. I'm the Xianyuan sword. Dongwang suddenly said, I see. With the characteristics of a Xianyuan sword and your own strength, you're right. You still have a 30% chance. Since that's the case, I can let you go to the realm of the gods without any worries. Let's go. A faint golden light was released from Dongwang's body and enveloped his and Qiyu's bodies. They floated up and flew in the direction of his throne. The two of them passed through the throne and arrived in a special space. It was a milky white platform. From the looks of it, the platform didn't seem to be connected to any other place. Below their feet was a white jade flat ground. Around them was the silent night sky. Stars twinkled around them. At this moment, the place where Qiyu and Dongwang were, it seemed to be the center of the universe. Dongwang looked at the night sky and said calmly, Qiyu, what can you feel? Qiyu closed his eyes and murmured, The vastness of the universe, the boundless energy aura. Dongwang nodded and said, "That's right. Every time I come here, I have the same feeling. But here, this is the only way from our world to the realm of the gods. It's also the last way. Chiyu, are you curious about my relationship with the immortal in the mirror?" Chiyu said, "That's your private matter. I don't need to know." Dongwang smiled and said, "Actually, it's not a big deal to tell you. Perhaps you've guessed something. Since you're about to go to the realm of the gods, then you need to know everything about the past. In this case, it might be beneficial for you when you reach the realm of the gods. Although I don't know what you want there, it's always good to know more." Chiyu nodded and listened quietly. Dongwang's eyes revealed a complicated look, as if he was reminiscing and hating something. The gods of water and fire. There's nothing wrong with creating our world. And the gods of the realm of the gods were actually the first humans created by the gods of water and fire. Chiyu was shocked and said, "Gods are humans?" Dongwang laughed self-deprecatingly and said, "Gods are just a nice name. In fact, gods are just humans. There's not much difference. It's just that they've mastered some of the mysteries of energy and are far stronger than humans today. That's why they're called gods. In this world, how can there be any gods? In fact, they're just manifestations of energy. Even the gods of water and fire are no exception." Chi nodded and said, "It's just that the size of the energy is different. It also determines the strength and status of the gods." "Yes, that's right. Actually, with your current strength, you can already be called a god. In fact, you're much stronger than many of the gods in the past. The gods have long since declined. The so-called gods of water and fire are actually very laughable. Do you know why they created humans in the first place?" Chiyu shook his head. Dongwang said, "It's because they were fighting among themselves. Although they're strong, they're just two individuals. At their level, no matter how hard they try, the amount of energy they can absorb is limited. Therefore, they thought of splitting some individuals from their own bodies and nurturing them one by one to achieve the goal of absorbing energy better. Unfortunately, when these individuals gradually became stronger and had their own thoughts, they were no longer willing to be controlled by them. Therefore, everything that happened after that happened. The gods of water and fire were indeed strong. Even though the first batch of humans that they split off had the power of gods, they were no match for them. Therefore, they were destroyed in the end. As a result, there are no more gods in the East on Earth. As for those in the West, they're just a bunch of clowns. It's impossible for them to be valued by the gods of water and fire. What I'm going to tell you now is the culture of gods that once existed. Culture of gods. Chiyu looked at Dongwang in surprise. The current Dongwang was no longer as hysterical as before. He looked more like a wise man. That's right. The so-called culture of gods is actually the culture that was gradually created after the gods were born. The humans on Earth today weren't actually born from the gods of water and fire. Instead, they were created by the first batch of humans, also known as the so-called gods. Back then, the first two individuals to split off from the gods of water and fire were the most powerful. They were Pangu and Nuwa. They possessed extremely great power. Pangu opened up all kinds of mountains and rivers on Earth, while Nuwa gave life to Earth and created humans. In the process of doing this, the gods of water and fire gradually split off into many individuals, which later became the gods. These gods weren't as close to the gods of water and fire as Pangu and Nuwa were. This was because when they were born, they didn't have any thoughts. As their energy continued to increase, their thoughts were gradually perfected. This also made them understand the importance of origin energy. No one wanted to be enslaved. Everyone wanted to obtain the most powerful power and benefits. This was the deep-rooted evil nature of humans. Therefore, when Pangu and Nuwa created the human world on Earth, these gods also created their own world, which was the Eastern Divine Realm. From among them, they elected the most powerful person, who became the Jade Emperor. He led the gods to develop and develop. They also learned how to create gods. Therefore, the Divine Realm became more and more prosperous. There were also more and more low-level gods. These gods could rely on the cultivation methods passed down by the gods to continuously improve their own strength until they became even more powerful. Under such rules, The divine realm gradually improved its own strength under such circumstances. The Jade Emperor? Did the Jade Emperor really exist? Qi looked at Dong Wang in surprise. He had always thought that the so-called legends about the Jade Emperor were just legends. Dong Wang nodded and said proudly, "Of course. The Jade Emperor was a great strategist. If it weren't for him, the divine realm wouldn't have developed so quickly." At this point, his expression suddenly became gloomy. Unfortunately, he was a little too eager for success. His overly rapid development also attracted the attention of the gods of water and fire in a short period of time. If he knew how to restrain himself, perhaps by the time the gods of water and fire discovered him, they would already be strong enough to fight against the gods of water and fire. Unfortunately, this is something that will never happen. In the divine realm, the most powerful ruler is naturally the Jade Emperor. However, the Jade Emperor wasn't born directly from the gods of water and fire. He was formed from an individual that was separated from the god of water, Ganga. The individual that separated him from the god of the divine realm had strength similar to the Jade Emperor. In fact, she was even more powerful. She was the Queen Mother of the West. In other words, the Jade Emperor's mother. Qiyu's eyes lit up. He seemed to have thought of something. At this moment, he saw a trace of sadness in Dong Wang's eyes. Dong Wang continued. Although the Jade Emperor was unruly and could even ignore the gods of water and fire, he was after all an individual that was separated from the Queen Mother of the West. Therefore, he had always been very respectful toward his own mother. The affairs of the divine realm were completely managed by the Jade Emperor. However, the Jade Emperor had to listen to the Queen Mother on some matters. The Queen Mother of the West was very hot-tempered. One day, when the Jade Emperor's favorite woman unintentionally offended her, she was furious and killed the woman. Because of this, there was a huge rift between the Jade Emperor and the Queen Mother of the West. Because of this, the Jade Emperor could not eat or sleep in peace. That was the only woman that he truly loved. For that woman, he was even willing to give up his own position. However, that woman was already dead. On one side was his lover, and on the other side was his own mother. He didn't even know how to deal with it. Under these complicated circumstances, he focused all his energy on increasing his strength. He tried his best to increase the strength of all the gods in the divine realm. It was a crazy increase. Finally, when the power of the gods was about to reach a level that could threaten the gods of water and fire, they appeared. In a process of resisting, the gods of the divine realm was finally destroyed by the gods of water and fire. However, the gods of water and fire were heavily injured when they destroyed the divine realm. The Queen Mother of the West suddenly came to her senses. Before she died, she finally understood that all of this was caused by her. She self-destructed her own energy and soul imprint. In addition to the Jade Emperor's power, the gods of water and fire's power were at least half destroyed. If it wasn't for the existence of Pangu and Nuwa, the final result would be hard to say. The divine realm was finished. Under the joint efforts of the gods of water and fire, Pangu and Nuwa, it was finally completely destroyed. All the gods disappeared and became free energy. The gods of water and fire also left. They went to the universe to find suitable energy to recover their vitality. Before they left, they sealed the divine realm that no longer had any gods. Initially, they had wanted to destroy the entire immortal world. However, how could the divine realm that the Jade Emperor had been managing for so many years be destroyed so easily? With their strength at that time, they could only seal it. After that, they collected the divine sense of the strongest gods that had not been completely destroyed. They made them into the 10 great artifacts and gave them to Pangu and Nuwa to recreate the human world. Oh, I forgot to mention that Earth's original form was different from how it was now. Its volume was more than 10 times larger than it was now. It was just that it suffered a huge blow in the battle between the gods. Even the human world created by Pangu and Nuwa was destroyed, leaving behind a lot of energy of different types. At that time, there was no human left at all. After the battle ended, Pangu and Nuwa worked together. Pangu used Pangu's axe to split the sky and earth, and Yuwa gave life to the earth again. Unfortunately, the mutated energy created a large number of mutated creatures, which were those ancient giant beasts. The entire earth was reborn, but it was no longer the earth of the past. The 10 great artifacts were sealed on the earth by Pangu and Yuwa. When all of this was done, they left the world and went to meet the gods of water and fire. During this process, there were actually only 9 divine weapons that they could truly control. This was because the number 1 divine weapon had been personally sealed by the water and fire goddesses. That's me, the Shining Emperor Bell. Chi looked at Dongwang deeply. At this moment, he understood everything. Although the Shining Emperor Bell was different from what Yinling and Master the Guru had said, he completely believed everything that Dongwang said. This was the truth, because he was the god who dared to fight against the gods of water and fire. You are the Jade Emperor. The immortal in the mirror was your beloved concubine, the one who was destroyed by the Queen Mother of the West. Am I right? Chiyu asked. Dongwang nodded bitterly. There is no Jade Emperor anymore. I am just the main soul of the Eastern Emperor Bell. Chiyu asked, since you were the one who started the war, why didn't the water and fire gods destroy you, but instead turned you into a divine weapon? Dongwang said indifferently, do you think they didn't want to destroy me? It was just that they couldn't do it at that time. My soul is almost the same as theirs. Once it reaches their level, it can never be destroyed. If they had completely destroyed my energy, my divine sense would have immediately left this world and would have been sent to another place by the instantaneous explosion of energy. As long as I'm given enough time, once I've absorbed enough energy, I'll be able to return. That's the result that the water and fire gods absolutely don't want to see. That's why they decided to seal me, never giving me the chance to increase my strength. Therefore, I became the Eastern Emperor Bell. Now, I can't even step into the realm of gods, let alone create a god. From the Eastern Emperor Bell, Chiyu felt a decadent aura. However, he could easily understand it. A former superpowerhouse had turned into a divine tool. That kind of feeling was something that no one could accept. Who was right and who was wrong? From a different standpoint, the answer would be different. The gods of water and fire were not wrong. They were worried that the gods would develop to a level that would affect the entire world and threaten their existence. The Jade Emperor was not wrong either. No one wanted to be suppressed by others. To Chiyu, all these were meaningless. What he wanted to do now was to solve the problems on Earth. The Eastern Emperor Bell looked at Chiyu, and the light in its eyes softened. Everything has changed, but nothing has changed. Nothing has changed? What does that mean? Chiyu asked in surprise. The Eastern Emperor said indifferently, haven't you noticed? In fact, there wasn't much difference between humans and the God realm back then. They were both constantly improving their own strength. Back then, the process of improvement in the realm of gods was very long. It is the same for you humans now. It is just that you're taking a different path. Over the past millions of years, my consciousness has always enveloped the human world, and I can see everything that is happening in the human world. I have seen the technology that you have developed. In my opinion, it is something even more terrifying than improving energy. When the day comes that your technology has reached a level that can destroy the world, I am afraid that the final outcome will be no different from the realm of gods. It is a process of destruction. Even if the water and fire gods do not appear, you will still self-destruct. The rapid development of science is not necessarily a good thing for humans. The Eastern Emperor's view made Chiyu feel enlightened. That's right. The development of science and technology can indeed bring about a brand new life for humans. However, the development of science and technology can also bring about many negative effects to humans. Environmental damage. The emergence of large-scale destructive weapons has caused the structure of the world to constantly change. When the day comes when science and technology develop to a certain level, the human world might really be destroyed by itself. That is something that no one wants to see. However, can it really be avoided? It is very difficult, very difficult. The Eastern Emperor smiled and said, now, you should have some understanding of the realm of gods. In fact, even I do not know how the water and fire gods sealed the realm of gods. I can open the door to the realm of gods, but what you encounter and what you get will depend on you. If you can also improve to my level, maybe everything that happens on Earth in the future will change. At the very least, you can use some means to control the development of the human world. Only in this way can humans continue to exist. I'm telling you all this because I want to pass on some of my experiences to you. As for what you're going to do in the future, as for what you will do in the future, I will not be able to interfere. Perhaps I will really have to stay here forever. Chiyu, I beg you for one thing. Chiyu said, Senior, tell me. Tell me if I can do it. The Eastern Emperor said, Xian is the love of my life. Actually, what I said about the Kong Tong seal just now was somewhat false. I will not be able to leave this seal. If possible, when you no longer need Xian's power in the future, send her here. At least, I will not be so lonely. This is my greatest wish in life. Can I? Chiyu said, Senior, if I can come back alive this time and solve the crisis on Earth. Moreover, once the crisis on Earth is resolved, Senior Immortal in the mirror will definitely be sent back to you so that you and your husband can reunite. If I can't come back, she will always stay with you. I hope you can take care of my companions. The Eastern Emperor laughed and said, Okay, this is a promise between us men. You should have recovered most of your strength by now. I'm going to start. He said so much to Chiyu. First, he wanted Chiyu to have a real understanding of what happened in the divine realm. Second, he wanted him to recover as much power as possible. When he released the Kong Tong seal just now, Chiyu's soul aura was greatly affected. If it wasn't for the powerful divine sense he got from the Eastern Emperor, he wouldn't have been able to do it. The soul needed to recover on its own. Even the Eastern Emperor couldn't help him. At this time, the Eastern Emperor felt that Chiyu's power was almost recovered. He prepared to open the gate to the divine realm. Golden light flashed, and two huge balls of energy rose from the Eastern Emperor's side. He used his spiritual power to tell Chiyu to stay where he was and not move. Then, a huge wave of energy surged out. The golden bell had already enveloped Chiyu's body. It was a golden bell without any decorations. The smooth body of the bell was completely transparent, causing Chiyu's view of the outside world to be a blur. The Eastern Emperor Bell. Was this the real body of the Eastern Emperor Bell? Dong Wang opened his arms and floated in midair. Suddenly, he started waving his fists. Balls of golden energy floated out one after another, transforming into huge balls of light that bombarded the bell of Dong Wang from the outside. Inside the bell, Chiyu couldn't feel any vibrations or sound. However, he could clearly see circles of golden light being released from the Eastern Emperor Bell into the depths of the universe. To be able to produce such an effect in the vast universe, Chiyu didn't need to ask to know how terrifying this energy was. If he was still outside, the sound produced by the Eastern Emperor Bell would be enough to become the strongest attack. This was the true terror of the Eastern Emperor. As the Eastern Emperor continued to attack, the vibration of the Eastern Emperor Bell became more and more intense. The circles of golden light converged into a golden ocean in outer space. The halo continued to rise into the sky. Chiyu suddenly felt his vision blur. Suddenly, a golden staircase descended from the sky and appeared in front of him. The Eastern Emperor's anxious voice rang in his ear. Hurry up, I can't hold on for too long. You can't fly, so use your body to walk up. Hurry. Upon hearing Dong Wang's voice, Chiyu immediately sprang into action. His body darted forward, and he had already stepped onto the golden stairs. His legs flickered like a phantom as the tips of his toes touched the ground, and he quickly climbed up the stairs. He knew that the golden staircase was formed by the energy emitted by the Eastern Emperor Bell. That was why he could climb it. As long as the Eastern Emperor didn't have enough energy, the staircase would disappear. When that happened, it would be hard to say what would happen. On the surface, this space shuttle seemed to be much easier than before, but in fact, it was the most thrilling of them all. Different planes had different levels of difficulty. For example, the Eastern Celestial World, which was the strongest plane, was naturally the most dangerous. An oppressive feeling enveloped Chiyu's body. Every cell in his body seemed to have become extremely inert. However, He didn't dare to stop. He didn't know how long he had been climbing. He continued to move upwards and continued to work hard. His surroundings had already turned into a golden world. Chiyu didn't know how long he had been climbing. When he heard the distant sound of the bell, his spirit, which had entered a special state, finally woke up. In front of him, a huge door appeared. Below his feet was a completely golden cloud. This is the southern heavenly gate of the celestial world. I can only send you up to here. Chiyu, I believe that you will definitely come back alive. Eastern Emperor's weak voice rang in Chiyu's mind. In the next moment, his aura was already far away. The celestial world, the Eastern celestial world. I have finally arrived. Feeling the aura around him, Chiyu had an urge to raise his arms and shout. Everything in front of him looked so real. What surprised him even more was that after he arrived in the Eastern celestial world, all the pressure around him had disappeared. Even the air was no different from that on Earth. The fresh air made him feel like he was in a forest. Although everything around him was illusory, it felt like he had returned to Earth. He slowly walked forward towards the huge door. Through the door, Chiyu could see that everything was completely golden. Soon, he walked to the front of the huge door. At this moment, Chiyu suddenly saw a strange scene. On the other side of the door, without any warning, another Chiyu had appeared. He didn't know when, but he was facing Chiyu. Even his actions and expression were exactly the same. Chapter 347. A mirror? Could it be that he was facing a mirror? However, why was it that all the other things in the mirror were different from the one behind him, and only he was the same? At least on the surface, this situation was incomprehensible. Chiyu finally took a step forward. A strange scene occurred. The him opposite him did the same action, and in the next moment, Chiyu's body had already collided with his self. With a loud bang, Chiyu and his other self fell back at the same time. Their actions and expressions were exactly the same. Chiyu could clearly feel that he had collided with a solid body, and in the next moment, he had already been knocked back. Could it be an energy body? Chiyu did not hesitate to release his silver dragon barrier, and his other self actually released the same energy. The silver dragon barrier, which was immune to energy, finally lost its glow. What was in front of him was not an illusion in the mirror, but a real entity. After another collision and falling back, Chiyu's face was already a little ugly. He tried to use a slight amount of energy to attack his opponent, and tried to increase his movement speed to the limit. However, no matter what he did, his other self did the same thing and did the same thing. The divine realm was indeed not so simple. Just entering it was already so difficult. Chiyu's breathing stabilized, and he sat cross-legged on the ground, thinking seriously. Closing his eyes, Chiyu's mind was completely focused. His brain was working at high speed. From the moment he entered the Dongwang domain, the scenes that had happened before flashed in his mind continuously, and he was seriously thinking about every detail. He believed, no matter how strange the divine realm was, it was impossible for there to be no loopholes. Since that was the case, there must be a way. Even Chiyu himself did not know how long he had been thinking. He had already thought of all kinds of methods, but he still could not find a solution. Faced with someone who was completely like him, what could he do to break through? No matter what changes happened to his body, his other self would also experience the same situation. Even if his strength had increased through cultivation, he would not be able to do so. It would probably be the same. Deep thought caused Chiyu to temporarily fall into an impasse. Just as he was struggling to come up with a solution, suddenly, his thoughts shifted to the moment when he had just ascended to the immortal realm. At that time, it was as if he had passed through an entire space. He was filled with the aura of liberation, as if everything had changed. An idea flashed through his mind, and Chiyu suddenly jumped up from the ground, no longer looking at his other self. Instead, she turned around and looked in the opposite direction. When he first entered this world, he felt that the huge door in front of him was the door to the divine realm. However, he suddenly thought, what if he had already passed through this door when he first entered this world? Dongwang had always said that he could help him enter the divine realm, but it couldn't help him return. In that case, the difficulty of entering the God realm and returning to the god realm were obviously disproportionate. Since that was the case, it was unlikely that he would encounter trouble that was almost impossible to pass through, right? So he turned around. There was nothing but golden mist in front of him. There was nothing, not even a door. At this moment, Chi-Yu's mind was completely alert. From his current point of view, this could also be the divine realm. And the other side of the door where his other self was blocking might be the way back. If that was the case, then everything would be much easier to solve. As he thought of this, Chi-Yu felt his mind suddenly become clear. He floated up and directly flew towards the vast and boundless golden sea of clouds. Behind him, the other him outside the door did the same thing. His body flew at high speed, his mental strength released outwards without any hindrance. The energy in his body flowed naturally, and the air here gave Chi-Yu a very comfortable feeling. However, this also made Chi-Yu more and more worried. Instead, he hoped that there would be a strong barrier in the divine realm. Only then would it prove that there was an extremely strong energy in the divine realm, and only then would it be possible for him to reach the true 9 cloud level. However, with the current aura that was similar to that of Earth, how could he improve his strength? After deciding on a direction, Chi-Yu continued to fly forward. He was no longer thinking about what dangers he would encounter. He only wanted to search the vast and empty divine world to see if there was anything there. Other than leaving a trace of mental strength at the southern heavenly gate, the rest of his mental strength was completely released, expanding to the maximum level and searching everything in this world. After flying for more than an hour in Earth time, a surprise finally appeared. A faint energy aura attracted Chi-Yu's attention. If not for the fact that his mental strength and soul had been raised to an unprecedented level by the Donghuang aura, it would have been difficult for him to discover the existence of this faint energy aura. After confirming his target, Chi-Yu rushed over like an arrow released from a bow. The hope in front of him was like finding an oasis in a desert. With his speed, he quickly reached his destination. In the dense golden mist, he found a very small stone, and the energy aura came from this stone. The stone was irregular in shape and was about the size of a fist. Chi-Yu held it in his hand, and his eyes glowed. Under the guidance of the source of nature, the various energies in his body entered the stone and tried to find out its attributes. The attributes were very clear, and it didn't take long for Chi-Yu to figure it out. The faint energy contained in this stone was exactly the same as the Donghuang's. Although this did not help him much, it at least proved that his judgment was correct. But at the very least, it proved that his judgment was correct. This was the real divine world, and if he wanted to leave the divine world, he would have to find a way to pass through his other self. Only then would he be able to leave the divine world. The same aura as the Donghuang, which meant that it was the aura of the divine realm. Thinking about this, Chi-Yu could not help but think of the palace where the Donghuang was. Without a doubt, the Donghuang must be in his Eastern Emperor Bell territory. It was based on the territory that he had set up in the divine realm in the past. The reason why there were no gods in the divine realm was obviously because they had been destroyed by the gods of water and fire, and even the palace was no exception. This stone should have been part of the palace in the divine realm. Although its energy was weak, it was very pure, and this was enough to prove a lot of things. A faint light flickered. After Chi-Yu understood all this, he already had his own goal. The divine realm had been sealed, and since that was the case, the divine realm had lost its original energy, which was why it had become like the Earth's aura. It was impossible for him to get what he wanted here. However, this did not mean that he could not succeed. The divine realm was empty. However, it was not as if there was no energy. At least, the energy that was produced when the gods of water and fire sealed the divine realm still existed. That was the energy of the gods of water and fire, and what he needed now. Wasn't it just the energy of water and fire? Realizing this point, Chi-Yu smiled. He suddenly felt that he was not the only one. Previously, he was like a headless fly, bumping around everywhere, but he did not expect that the thing he really needed was right in front of him. He turned around, condensed his mental energy into a straight line, and determined the direction he had come from. He floated up, increased his speed to the limit, and flew away. This was because this time he had already determined the direction, and there was no need to search for energy. Therefore, the speed at which he returned was more than twice as fast as when he came. In less than half an hour, he had returned to the southern heavenly gate. In the distance, when he saw the door, he also saw himself getting closer and closer to it. Chiyu spread the wings of the golden-winged rock and floated down, coming face to face with his other self. A smile appeared on his face, and he raised his right hand, gently sending it forward. The other Chiyu naturally sat down and did the same thing. The two identical him pressed their right hands on each other's left shoulder at the same time. This was a seal. The person in front of him, who looked exactly like him, was the seal he had placed on himself. There was no longer any energy left in the God realm. However, in order to seal this world, there would not be any changes. The gods of water and fire had already extracted all the energy in the original God realm, and with the addition of their origin energy, they had formed this seal. And this was how the other self he was facing was formed. If he forcefully attacked, all of his skills, movements, and attack power would be the same as his, and the one who would be hurt in the end would be him. But why did he have to attack? Was there no other way? Chiyu did not attack, and he stretched out his left hand again. Just like before, this time, their left hands were placed on each other's shoulders. Chiyu moved his body backwards, just in time to make a movement of his other self's hands. The two Chiyu, for palms facing each other, because Chiyu did not use any energy, so his other self was fine. Chiyu laughed and said to himself, although the gods of water and fire are powerful, they have forgotten that in this mirror-like situation, the real body and the illusion reached out their right hands at the same time, but pressed on each other's left shoulder. If it was just an attack, then everything would become meaningless, and the end result would be a lose-lose situation. But what if I'm not attacking? At this point, he had already begun to move, and pure fire thundercloud force was slowly released from his right palm. At the same time, Chiyu could clearly feel a similar gentle fire thundercloud force entering his body from his left hand. Right hand output, left hand input. The fire thundercloud force began to form a strange cycle between Chiyu and his other self. On the surface, this seemed like a meaningless thing. The amount of energy that was released was how much energy was released, and it did not affect Chiyu much. However, Chiyu naturally had his own reasons for doing this. On the way back to the southern heavenly gate, he had already thought about it carefully. Although everything about the illusion in front of him was the same as him, there was one thing that was different. This was very simple, and that was the origin. Everything about the illusion was an imitation of him. Even the energy was the same as his, but the origin was completely different. Its origin came from the energy of the seal, and through some ingenious things in the seal, it was an imitation of him. Furthermore, the power within the seal was completely different from his own. It was the power of the original God realm. Therefore, although the energy output was the same, the energy aura was also the same. However, the Kirin fire thundercloud force that was released from the illusion had the origin of the God realm, and not the Kirin true fire that Chiyu had on Earth. In other words, Chiyu was now converting energy, using the fire thundercloud force to convert the thundercloud force, so that his thundercloud force would no longer have the aura of Earth. In this way, he would not need to be restricted by the increase of energy on Earth. To Chiyu, this was just a test. This was because he knew that the only place in the God realm that had energy was this seal. No matter how hard he tried to find it, there would be no results. Therefore, if he wanted to improve his strength, he had to start from the seal. Perhaps when he found the energy that he really needed, he would naturally be able to break this seal and leave. There was no loss in trying, at least it was a chance. With this thought in mind, Chiyu was now very calm. The scorching fire thundercloud force was constantly flowing in his body. While going through the process of input and output, Chiyu released his origin of nature energy aura and absorbed the energy molecules in the air. Although the energy molecules here were not as rich as in the 5 elements domain, at least it was the same as on Earth. Something strange happened. Chiyu's illusion opposite him was doing the same thing. Almost whenever Chiyu's energy changed, it would also change. Very soon, Chi Yu was ecstatic to find that his decision was completely correct. When the last trace of the original fire thundercloud force in his body was converted into the fire thundercloud force that was inputted to him by the illusion in front of him, Chi Yu suddenly stopped. At this moment, he clearly felt that when the fire thundercloud force cycled again, the energy had begun to increase, and the speed of the increase was extremely fast, like a rocket soaring into the sky. The illusion opposite him was still doing the same thing as Chi Yu. However, from the aura, Chi Yu discovered that after the opponent's fire thundercloud force was completely converted into his own thundercloud force, the invisible pressure produced on Earth actually appeared on the illusion. In other words, now that Chi Yu had the aura of the divine realm, his fire thundercloud force could be improved again, but the other Chi Yu opposite him, after being converted into Chi Yu's energy, was bound and could not be improved. In this way, the balance was naturally broken. Chi Yu laughed out loud. He never thought that the thing that he had been looking forward to could be solved so easily. The joy of success made him feel refreshed both physically and mentally. The hard work that he had put in these days had finally paid off. How could he not be happy? A faint light flickered, and a strange smile appeared in Chi Yu's eyes. He smiled, and naturally, the illusion opposite him also smiled. However, in Chi Yu's eyes, the other Chi Yu's smile seemed to be congratulating him. With a smile on his face, Chi Yu once again raised his hands and performed the same action as before. However, Chi Yu would not switch the fire thundercloud force with the opponent again. This time, it became the gentle water thundercloud force, and the process was exactly the same as before. Feeling the same water thundercloud force flowing into his body from the other hand, the smile on Chi Yu's face became more and more intense. Success was right in front of him. How could he not be happy? Finally, after a short process, Chi Yu's water thundercloud force was completely switched with the illusion opposite him. He once again cut off the energy connection with the other party. He took a deep look at his own illusion. The smile on Chi Yu's face disappeared, and he sincerely said to the other Chi Yu, "Thank you. If it wasn't for you, I'm afraid I would never be able to reach the real ninth cloud." The seal of the two great gods of water and fire actually helped me in such a situation. I didn't expect this at all. Perhaps this is the will of the heavens. Bull Demon King, wait for me. When I break through to the real ninth cloud level, the four auspicious clouds, Ink Kirin, that will be the moment I go back. Closing his eyes, the water and fire thundercloud force in his body operated at the same time. Following his previous practice, Chi Yu began his final sprint. Without the restraint of the energy suppression, he finally had a breakthrough in his practice. His rocketing speed allowed Chi Yu to quickly enter the state of meditation. Opposite him, the pitiful illusion was also cultivating. It was a pity that he had already been exchanged with Chi Yu. At the same time, he was also being suppressed by the earth ball that Chi Yu passed to him. He was also practicing. However, the result was completely different. The realm of equilibrium that sealed the realm of gods had begun to tilt. Chi Yu did not notice that the seal of the realm of gods had begun to tremble slightly. The huge energy was unevenly producing cracks. At this moment, the bull demon king, who Chi Yu had been thinking about, finally woke up from the state of meditation. In that unknown cave, he opened his cold and fierce eyes. Taking a deep breath, the bones in the bull demon king's body made a cracking sound. His whole body completely froze. Then his bones began to change. His originally wide and fierce body quickly shrank. In a short while, he became exactly like an ordinary human. Even his ugly face had turned into a handsome one. Apart from the pair of black bull horns on his head, he had become a handsome male human. He was about 9 meters tall. The only difference between him and an ordinary human was the top of his head. The bull demon king laughed. Chi Yu, the energy that you have been practicing for so many years has finally become mine. Your soul has also been completely refined by me. The realm that I have been looking forward to has actually come so silently. I really have to thank you. As he spoke, the bull demon king slowly raised his right hand. With a flash of light, the Pangu axe appeared in his grasp. However, the Pangu axe didn't look any different from an ordinary axe. The only difference was that the two arcs on the blade and the handle of the axe looked very harmonious, like a heavenly steed soaring through the sky. The aura of the Pangu's axe was no different from that of the Bull Demon King. Looking at the axe blade that was like a pool of autumn water, the Bull Demon King's eyes revealed a trace of longing. Chiyu, why can't I feel your aura? Could it be that you have gone into hiding? Unfortunately, no matter where you are hiding, I will find you. Unless you don't want the East to continue to exist. With a flash of his figure, there was only air left in the cave. At this time, the Bull Demon King had already appeared in the dark sky outside. Frowning, the Bull Demon King raised his head and looked at the dark sky. The light in his eyes could not help but become a little annoyed. So what if it's the 9-star alignment? For me, such an evil aura no longer has any meaning. Only those insignificant evil planes would use this energy to invade the earth. No matter what, I am also from the East. God of the West. Let me have a look first. Speaking up to this point, the Bull Demon King revealed a strange smile on his face. Without seeing how he moved, a dark red lightning suddenly flashed in the sky. The next moment, his body had already disappeared once again. Berlin, Germany. Satan sat proudly on the main seat, listening to the reports of his subordinates. Hades and Lucifer sat on either side of him. Hades was leisurely drinking coffee, his movements very elegant. If the people present did not know him very well, they would probably think that he was a noble gentleman. Lungair stood below, listening to the reports of her subordinates, while issuing orders with an expressionless face. Ever since the last time when Shiyu and the Zodiac Guardian God warriors almost defeated the allied forces of the underworld and hell, Satan had completely handed over the task of commanding the Burning Legion to Lungair. He realized more and more that his daughter was actually so outstanding. She was even better than him when he first started his business. Especially Lungair's grasp of various aspects of the battle situation. She could always be just right. Restrict the freedom of movement of all humans, but do not kill anyone. Otherwise, you will be punished according to military law. After Lungair coldly issued the order to the last general, the hall that was temporarily summoned finally became quiet. Ironically, this hall was originally the place where the Berlin Vatican was located. At this time, it had been completely eroded by darkness. Hades said to himself, I'm afraid it's not good to go on like this. We are here to occupy the Vatican, not to save the world. What's the point if we don't kill people? Satan frowned. He looked at his daughter. Lungair turned around, without looking at Hades, and said, Dad, it has been a long time since we came to this world. But didn't you notice that after you listened to my advice and stopped killing, the speed of our expansion has increased by more than 3 times. It is more than 3 times faster than before. In the past few days, there have been another 4 Western European countries that have declared their allegiance to us. Endless killing. It will only make humans desperately resist and despair. It will consume our soldiers, and it will also greatly slow down the speed of our occupation of the entire Earth. Therefore, there is no point in killing. What we need to do is to occupy them. The deep-rooted bad habits of humans will always exist. As long as they're given a way to live, no matter who is the leader, they will gradually accept it. This could be clearly seen from the history of mankind. So, occupying is the way out. Not to kill. Some people are short-sighted and only see temporary happiness, but have forgotten what our real purpose is. Humans are dead. Who will be our slaves in the future? Who will listen to our orders? Listening to Lungair's words, Satan revealed a knowing smile on his face and subconsciously nodded. Hades, on the other hand, was speechless as he looked at Lungair. He looked at Lungair and a cold light flashed in his eyes, but he quickly returned to normal. It turned out that ever since Salinger took over the command of the army, she no longer chose to kill. Instead, she used the powerful strength of the Burning Legion as a deterrent, dismantling all the weapons and defensive measures of the European countries as much as possible, and then coercing the other party to surrender. She no longer carried out the original killing plan. So, Although more than half of Europe had fallen into their hands, the number of humans killed did not increase. Satan said, "Since that's the case, Lungair, do as you say. Your Highness King of Hell, do you have any objections?" Hades laughed and shook his head, saying, "Miss Lungair is so considerate. What objections can I have? It seems that His Majesty and I can only sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. Your Majesty, I don't know if you have decided on the matter we discussed last time. If you are willing to agree to my request, I and all the underworld generals of the underworld are willing to become a part of Hell in the future. In fact, I only need a small part of the territory and not an equal division of the border like before." Satan looked at Hades and was about to say something, but Lungair said angrily, "Hades, stop dreaming. I will marry a pig or a dog rather than marry you." Hades' proposal was very simple. He had seen Lungair's ability to command the army, and in addition to some other reasons, he made an application to Satan for a marriage. Satan did not directly agree and was still considering it. Hades shrugged helplessly, saying, "Miss Lungair, am I really that hateful? In what way can I not compare to that human?" Lungair bit her lower lip and said coldly, "You can't compare to him in any way. When he was around, weren't you also beaten like a stray dog?" "Enough!" Satan shouted, and his expression turned somewhat ugly. Hades was not the only one who had been beaten like a stray dog. Looking at his daughter's stubborn gaze, he sighed and said, "Your Highness Hades, let's talk about this in the future. Right now, it is more important for us to occupy Earth. Lungair, how are your future plans?" Lungair retracted her cold gaze from Hades and looked at her father. She said, "Given our current situation, it will not take long for us to occupy all of Europe. The troops sent by the United States will not be a threat to us at all. As long as we can occupy Europe, we will enter a period of consolidation, and the rule of the various countries in Europe will be completely in our hands. After that, we will use Europe as a base and radiate to the surrounding continents. Starting from the American continent, followed by the African continent, we must isolate the Asian continent and attack at the end. However, I don't understand why Chi Yu and his subordinates have not appeared until now. Could it be that they are no longer protecting Earth?" At the mention of Chi Yu, a gentle glint flashed in the depths of Lungair's eyes, and she thought to herself, Chi Yu, what exactly are you doing? Could it be that you have encountered some trouble? No, it can't be. You are so powerful. So who can pose a threat to you? However, why haven't you appeared yet? Do you know? I have already done my best to stop the massacre by the allied forces of Hell and the Netherworld. When we meet again, I will at least give them some face. However, this is all I can do. Chi Yu, have you ever thought about me? Do you know? I miss you very much." The moment Lungair mentioned Chi Yu, both Hades and Satan's faces darkened. Chi Yu had left a very deep impression on them. Just the fact that Chi Yu had surpassed them in terms of power was already a huge threat to them. As long as he was around, Hell and the Netherworld would not be able to truly occupy this world. Although he had not appeared yet, that formless threat was like a huge rock pressing down on the hearts of these two rulers of the dimension of evil. Hades said coldly, "That human is not easy to deal with. We have to think of a foolproof plan. It's a pity that I no longer have 81 Netherworld generals. Otherwise, if we join forces and set up the Netherworld River Formation, even a fellow who is 100 times stronger would not be able to leave this place alive, let alone him." Lungair snorted disdainfully and said, "Anyone can brag, but whether they can actually do it is a problem. If you were really that powerful, you wouldn't still be here. Any excuse is just a cover for your weakness. What did you say?" Hades stood up abruptly, and the netherworld energy around his body surged. He looked at Lungair with a gloomy gaze. This was a sign that he was about to attack. "Enough," Satan said in a low voice. "That human is indeed a huge threat to us. Furthermore, all of his subordinates are powerful cultivators. How about this, Your Highness Netherworld King? Let us form the strongest force and prepare to face them at any time. You, me, Lucifer, your Netherworld generals, and some powerful cultivators under me. I think that no matter how powerful they are, they might not be able to deal with us." Hades nodded and said, "Let's do it this way. If possible, transfer some people from His Majesty's side to me and let the Netherworld generals form 81. I will bring them to cultivate the Netherworld River formation now. When that time comes, I will let those humans know how powerful we are.